It was finally coming to an end. You never have to forgive me. Itachi Uchiha's voice carried warmth as he gave a faint, almost serene smile. He extended his right hand, the familiar gesture of two fingers, index and middle, reaching toward his younger brother, Sasuke's forehead. Sasuke's eyes widened, caught off guard by the motion. All across the elemental nations, the Edo Tensei technique had been undone. Reanimated shinobi, legends and feared warriors alike were vanishing into nothingness. Itachi was no exception. With each step toward Sasuke, fractures began spreading through his body. His skin and clothing crumbled away into ash and dust, as if the world itself was reclaiming him. But he accepted it. This was the end he deserved. He had wiped out the Uchiha clan, slain his own parents, and caused his little brother a lifetime of anguish. Even though he had helped the allied shinobi forces by stopping Kabuto and ending Edo Tensei, that act alone could never erase the blood on his hands. Still, at least he had this final moment. Sasuke now knew the truth, why Itachi had done what he had, and that was enough for him. Instead of the usual light tap to the forehead, Itachi stepped closer, placed an arm gently around Sasuke's shoulders, and pulled him in. His other hand rested at the back of Sasuke's head, guiding it forward until their foreheads touched. No matter what path you choose, knowing this, I will always love you, little brother. His time was short, and that was all he had the chance to say. The glow surrounding his form, triggered when he forced Kabuto to end Edo Tensei, suddenly intensified. He could feel his very essence separating from the fragile vessel made of dust, ash, and sacrifice. Goodbye, little brother, he thought, his soul lingering for just a moment longer in front of Sasuke. I entrust the rest to you, Naruto. Tilting his head slightly upward, Itachi closed his eyes and allowed the faintest smile to touch his lips before he faded entirely from the living world. Thump, 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 the sound of slow, steady heartbeats echoed faintly. Itachi opened his eyes only to find himself surrounded by darkness. I didn't die, the thought came instantly, but that couldn't be right. Unless someone had used Edo Tensei on him again. He knew that sensation well, the unnatural drag from the afterlife back into a body, consciousness bound but movement stolen, trapped under the will of the summoner. But this time was different. He could feel his body. He had control over it. He wasn't a puppet. And yet, this shouldn't be possible. Edo Tensei was one of the only two known ways to bring the dead back. Then, the unsettling truth began to settle in. His body wasn't what it used to be. Something was wrong. He hadn't drawn a single breath since waking up, nor could he. Still, his heart was beating steadily. How could someone remain alive without breathing? This was not the afterlife he had imagined. His limbs felt frail, far weaker than they should, and his situation was strange. He was unclothed, curled tightly into a confined space, arms and legs drawn in close. Curled up, the position was unmistakable. Testing a theory, Itachi lowered a hand, fingers brushing against something soft, warm, and core-like that trailed from his midsection. It clung near his navel. He kicked experimentally and faintly, almost imperceptibly, heard a gentle, feminine giggle from somewhere beyond his enclosure. How much time had passed? Hours, days, weeks. Certainly not years. Pregnancies rarely lasted beyond 40 weeks. Judging by his fully formed body and the cramped space, he guessed there was less than a month until his birth. Patience had always been one of his virtues, so he remained still most of the time, listening. The muffled but tender tones of his mother's voice, sometimes accompanied by a deeper, firmer voice he assumed was his father's. He couldn't catch every word, but there was enough to glean a sense of who they were. During those moments of quiet, he reflected on his past life and accepted the truth. He had been reborn. Or at the very least, returned to infancy, but with his mind intact. Even more baffling, his chakra network remained fully formed, integrated into his new body. That defied everything he knew to be possible. Why me? What purpose could there be behind this? How could such a thing happen at all? Those questions circled endlessly in his mind. Soon, he would be born into a new world, an infant on the outside, yet still Itachi Uchiha within. And though he didn't know what awaited him, he knew he would face it with open eyes. The genius of the Uchiha clan couldn't help but question whether fate itself had granted him another chance, a rare opportunity to walk a different path. Perhaps the gods had seen fit to let him try again, to make choices he couldn't in his first life. Itachi was painfully aware of the blood on his hands. There was no denying the truth. He had slaughtered without mercy, driven countless souls into fear, and served within the shadows of Akatsuki for years, aiding their sinister plans. For someone like him, redemption was a dream that seemed far out of reach. And yet, how could he possibly turn away from this? He was about to live again, reborn, not to the same mother, but into an entirely different life. He didn't know what awaited him beyond the safety of the womb, nor if the elemental nations remained unchanged after the Fourth Shinobi War. But there was one certainty: this was a new life, a chance far brighter than the darkness of his past. He would not allow such an opportunity to slip away. And so, he waited, patiently, until the moment arrived. The first wave of strong contractions came, the result of his mother's body releasing oxytocin. The cramped warmth of the womb began to tighten, urging him toward the outside world. Through muffled sounds, he heard her cries of pain, the natural music of childbirth. "Push harder, Fiona-san, you're almost there," the doctor encouraged. So Fiona, that was his new mother's name. "You can do it, honey," came a deeper voice, his father's. It hurts," Fiona cried, voice raw with strain. First came his head, supported gently by the doctor's hands, then his shoulders, and finally the rest of his small body. The pain in Fiona's voice began to fade. Soft hands swaddled him in a fresh white towel before he was placed in the arms of the woman who had given him life. Her golden hair framed a face that, though pale from labor, shone with deep blue eyes and emotion. "Step aside, Ikiro-san," the nurse said to the black-haired man holding Fiona's hand. "This moment belongs to the mother." All right," Ikaru chuckled, stepping back to give space. "My son," Fiona's voice trembled as she reached out, brushing her fingertips against his cheek. Tears slipped down her face, joy pouring from her expression. "He's beautiful, isn't he?" she whispered. Itachi couldn't smile yet, but in his mind he did, touched by her warmth. From this moment on, she was his mother, and he was her child. "Congratulations, Fiona-san," the doctor said, wiping sweat from his brow. "He's perfectly healthy, though I must say it's unusual he's not crying." Surprise laced his tone. "He must be glad to see his parents," the nurse said with a smile. And indeed, he was. Few beings could claim to truly understand the joy of being welcomed into the world, and seeing his parents, or rather, his new parents, for the first time was something he would never forget. "He's a strong little one," Ikaru added with quiet pride, his thumb brushing away Fiona's tears. "What name will you give him, Fiona-san?" the doctor asked. "Itachi," she said softly. His mind reeled that name couldn't be mere coincidence. Itachi Uchida, not Uchiha but Uchida. Still, why that name? Out of every possible choice, why this one? "Very well, Itachi Uchida it is," the doctor confirmed, writing it down. "Enjoy these first moments, Fiona-san. We'll return in a few minutes." Then he and the nurse quietly stepped out, leaving the family alone. Sleep tugged at him, his newborn body too weak to fight it. As his eyes closed, he knew without doubt he was no longer the same being he once was. But soon he would learn what that truly meant. "Itachi-kun, dinner's ready." "One moment, Ka-sama." Itachi Uchida, once known as Itachi Uchiha, called back without looking up from the book in his lap, determined to finish the page before heading downstairs. 2 years had passed since his rebirth as the son of Ikaru and Fiona Uchida. Though vastly different from his first life, these years had been among the happiest he'd ever known. He had loved Fugaku and Mikoto Uchiha, but their lives were bound by the obligations of Leaf Shinobi. Born in the chaos of the Third Shinobi World War, his childhood in that life had been far from gentle. By contrast, Ikaru and Fiona nurtured him with patience and affection, eager to give their first child the best of everything. In his old life, he had been groomed as an Uchiha heir, a future shinobi. Now he was simply a child, and the difference was immeasurable. From the moment of his birth in this new life, Itachi was brought up like any ordinary child, surrounded by an unremarkable, peaceful setting. Ikaru and Fiona were nothing more than a regular husband and wife, far removed from the prestige and influence his former parents had possessed as leaders of a powerful clan. There was no chaos of war, no bloodshed, no urgent battles to fight. Death and destruction were absent, and unlike before, there was no constant pressure to devote every waking moment to training. This was the kind of simple, quiet existence he had never been granted before, one he had only ever longed for in dreams. Yet, only a couple of weeks after his birth, when he was returned to his parents' care, Itachi began to sense a deep and unsettling difference between this life and the one he had known before. The realization struck when he gazed upward one day, expecting to see a familiar blue sky, only to find it painted a strange shade of purple even in broad daylight. Nighttime was similar to what he remembered, though there was a moon. Something he later discovered was an artificial construct designed to make the darkness feel the same as the world he once knew. The strangeness deepened when, not long afterward, he witnessed his father effortlessly take to the air, propelled by a pair of black, bat-like wings. It didn't take much for Itachi to put the pieces together. He wasn't a human in this life at all. Before long, the truth was undeniable. He had been reborn as a devil. Determined to adjust without drawing suspicion, he waited patiently for several months until the day came when he was able to learn to speak and read naturally. Even though he retained the mind of a grown man, Itachi understood the danger of revealing such maturity while still an infant. So he played the part of a normal child, displaying cheerful and curious behavior, rarely ever crying. His skills as a shinobi made the act convincing. In truth, over the past 2 years, these childish displays had not been entirely fabricated. He was genuinely content, cherishing the chance to experience the childhood he had always been denied. But the illusion of normalcy began to fade once his parents noticed that their son's intelligence was far beyond that of an ordinary child. Though they were far from wealthy, Ikaru and Fiona sought out a capable tutor for him when he was just 15 months old. Within 2 months, Itachi was reading simple words fluently, astonishing all the adults around him. A mere month later, he could comprehend and memorize nearly anything placed before him. Of course, he was capable of much more, but he deliberately kept his growth at a measured pace to avoid alarming them. Through careful observation and research, Itachi came to understand more about his new race. He was the child of 2 pure-blooded but low-ranking devils, both employed in the service of the Gremory household, one of the 72 pillar clans still in existence, known for their high status, with the noble rank of duke. His mother served as a maid, and his father was the head chef for the family. He also familiarized himself with the innate powers of devils, secretly honing them to the highest degree possible for someone his age. Abilities such as flight came naturally, and compared to humans, devils possessed superior physical strength, heightened endurance, and sharpened senses, able to see farther and hear more keenly. Even as a toddler, his physical capabilities exceeded those of a trained civilian adult. By the age of 2, his body rivaled the condition he had been in just before entering the Shinobi Academy in his past life, allowing him to train in ways impossible for an ordinary child of his age. In this world, the Devil faction was ruled by 4 immensely powerful leaders known as the Mao Satan. The current holders of these titles, Lucifer, Leviathan, Beelzebub, and Asmodeus, were not the same as the original 4 who had once borne those names. Long ago, the original Mao had commanded the Devil faction in a cataclysmic war against God and the angels of heaven, as well as Azazel and the fallen angels. This great war was devastating. More than half of the 72 pillars were wiped out, along with the majority of the devil armies that served the high-class clans. The original Mao themselves perished in the conflict. After their fall, descendants of the old Mao attempted to continue their forebears' legacy, rallying powerful allies with the goal of igniting another great conflict. However, a separate group, the anti-Mao faction, rose in opposition, believing that the survival of the devil race depended on avoiding further catastrophic wars. This ideological divide erupted into a bloody civil war. The forces of the old Mao's descendants were ultimately crushed, forcing them into hiding deep within the underworld. The Mao titles they had once held were passed on to new rulers, while the original leaders became known as the Old Mao. The current Mao were Surzech Lucifer of the Gremory clan, Seraphal Leviathan of the Citri clan, Adjuka Beelzebub from the Astaroth clan, and Falbium Asmodeus of the Glaciala Bolas clan. Each of them had been born with overwhelming natural power, equal to or greater than the original Mao, and had been chosen to rule despite having no blood ties to their predecessors. In time, the Great War finally drew to a close, but its end left the three major factions in a state of lingering hostility. In the aftermath of the Great War, all three major factions were left utterly depleted, their primary fighting forces annihilated. With such overwhelming losses and exhaustion gripping them, none of the sides had the will to resume open hostilities. While true peace never came, neither did full-scale battles. For countless millennia, the factions remained in this tense equilibrium, with only minor skirmishes erupting when individuals from opposing sides happened to meet. This lingering tension was one of the reasons Itachi, even while living a seemingly quiet life, never abandoned the discipline and training of a shinobi. Yet the human world he now inhabited was nothing like the one he remembered. A few months earlier, he had pieced together two possible explanations for his circumstances. The first possibility was that he had somehow been thrown far into the future, an age dominated by advanced technologies where knowledge of chakra had completely vanished. How such a change came to be, he could not determine. The second theory seemed more plausible, that he now existed in an entirely different realm, perhaps a parallel world cut off completely from the elemental nations. This place was known as Earth, with its own well-recorded and intricate history preserved in books. These conclusions sparked yet more questions. Who could possess the power to transport him into this reality and grant him a new life starting as an infant? And why? Itachi suspected there was still much for him to uncover, for as far as his knowledge extended, only two beings might have the strength and authority to carry out such an act. Itachi-kun, if you don't get out here right this second, I'll ground you for an entire week without letting you touch a single book. I'm coming, he called back. Rising from his chair, he left his room and made his way to the dining area, where his parents were already seated with dinner prepared. His father was considered the head of their family, yet his mother had taken it upon herself to handle the cooking, and with good reason. Her skills in the kitchen were exceptional. It was 9 o'clock in the evening, the usual time for their meal since both parents finished their duties at the Gremory residence by 8:30. Good evening, Ka-sama, Tu-sama, Itachi greeted warmly, taking his place at the table. I swear, Itachi-kun, if you keep reading like that, you're going to turn into a computer, his mother remarked while setting down a dish, then sitting beside her husband, Ikaru, who smiled at the boy. Go easy on him, dear, Ikaru replied. To Itachi's interest, the language spoken here was identical to that of the elemental nations. His grandfather had once been a Japanese man before being reincarnated as a devil, which meant both Ikaru and Itachi were half Japanese. He's starting school soon, so it's fine if he's preparing himself. Isn't that right, Itachi? Yes, father, Itachi nodded. Excuse me, Fiona raised a brow. He's only 2 years old. School is still far off for him. Oh, come on, Fiona, our son is a genius. Ikaru's pride was evident. Remember what his teacher said, a prodigy who— But he's still just a child, Fiona interjected. I don't want his abilities to go to waste. Look at Ryazaju-sama, she already has her own tutor. Can we eat now? Itachi quickly cut in before the discussion could escalate. I'm hungry. His childlike smile softened Fiona's expression, and she handed him his chopsticks. They would be enjoying Japanese cuisine that evening, though not before she cast her husband a pointed I told you so glance. Itachi was, in the end, still a young boy. Anything more ambitious or mature would have to wait until he was older. 3 years later, don't worry, Tu-sama, Itachi assured his father, who appeared before him through a communication magic circle. I found it. In his hand was a white chef's hat, marked with the crimson emblem of the Gremory household, something his father had forgotten to take with him that morning. Excellent. Can you bring it to me? You know how to get to the Gremory residence, right? It was hard not to. Their home lay within the Gremory territory reserved for servants, only a mile from the mansion. Even from here, the rooftops of the grand estate were visible. Yes, father, I'll bring it right away. Be careful, Itachi-kun. Your mother would never forgive me if anything happened to you. Yes, father. With that, the magic circle faded. The 5-year-old hurried to the door, slipped on his shoes, and summoned his wings, which spread from his back in an instant. Taking to the air, he flew toward his destination, the quickest and safest route. The Gremory family was renowned for their genuine affection toward their servants, treating them with respect rather than as expendable tools. In a society where the low-born served the high-born, for nameless devils like his parents, earning a place in the service of House Gremory was akin to a dream realized. Their clan's territory rivaled the size of Honshu in Japan and boasted an impressive collection of castles for their kin. The Gremory territory was not only wealthy, but also boasted a highly advanced industry. When Surzech's Gremory, the eldest of the family, ascended to the title of Mau Lucifer, he relinquished his eligibility to lead the Gremory clan. As a result, the role of next clan head fell to Ria's Gremory, his younger sister by a single year. At only 4 years old, she was already regarded as a princess, brought up in luxury from birth. Her father was the patriarch of the Gremory clan, while her mother hailed from the Bale family, the most prestigious of the 72 pillars, holding the title of Great King. On top of that, her elder brother served as a Mau. It was difficult for Itachi to picture anyone foolish enough to cross a girl with such heritage and influence. It didn't take long for Itachi to reach the gates of the Gremory estate. Landing softly, he dismissed his wings and decided to proceed the rest of the way on foot. "Halt!" one of the guards called as Itachi approached. "State your purpose, boy." "My name is Itachi Uchida," the young prodigy replied. The guard's eyes flickered with faint recognition as Itachi held up a hat. "I came to deliver this to my father. He and my mother work here." "Oh, so you're Uchida-san's son," the guard said with a small smile before unlocking the gate. "Go ahead. The kitchen is upstairs on the 2nd floor, all the way down the hall. Look for steel double doors next to 2 paintings, one of fruit, one of vegetables." "Thank you," Itachi said politely, bowing his head before stepping into the residence. The Gremory estate was easily the grandest building he had ever seen in either of his lives. Getting to the 2nd floor took longer than expected. There were so many stairways and intersecting halls that a single wrong turn could have left him wandering for hours. Just as he found the correct hallway, a sharp female voice broke the silence. "Let go of me, Razor. Why are you being so cruel?" "I'm not being cruel, Riaz," came the smug reply of a boy, likely a little older than Itachi. "And don't deny it, you like me, don't you?" Riaz, the same Riaz Gremory his parents had mentioned so often. As he moved closer, Itachi glanced briefly at the scene. A young girl with flowing crimson hair and striking blue eyes stood trapped against a door, dressed in a green sundress. 3 boys, older and much taller, stood around her, the blonde in front pressing his hand against the door to block her escape. "Just because we're engaged doesn't mean I have to love you, Razor," Riaz snapped. "Are you deaf? I will never marry you ever." Itachi stepped slightly to the side, scooping up a few small stones from a decorative plant pot as he approached. "How long are you going to keep this up, Riaz?" Razor said arrogantly, folding his arms. "I know you're not fond of me. That's exactly why I insist you spend more time with Ouch." He yelped as a sharp sting hit the back of his head. "Who threw that?" Razor spun around, spotting only a black-haired boy several meters away. "Hey, stop right there." Itachi stopped, turned to face them, and discreetly hid the remaining stones in his father's hat. "Yes, Razor-sama," he asked calmly, locking eyes with the Fennec's heir. Ria's curiosity was now fixed on him. "Was this your doing?" Razor demanded, holding up the offending stone. "I don't know what you mean, Razor-sama," Itachi said evenly. "I would never dare disrespect the son of the Fennec's family." As he spoke, he flicked one stone toward the wall on his right, then another toward the wall on his left. The first bounced upward to the ceiling, then dropped onto a nearby table before ricocheting into the second midair, splitting it in 2. The fragments shot upward into a chandelier, which dislodged several small pieces that struck 2 of Razor's companions hard enough to make them stagger. "What the hell?" they cried, clutching their heads. Razor turned to check on them, giving Itachi the perfect moment to launch the rest of his stones one after another. They collided midair before one final piece smacked Razor in the back of the head. "Ouch, you!" he roared, igniting fiery wings that flared like a phoenix. His furious gaze locked on Itachi, but the black-haired boy remained completely composed. He already knew exactly what he was dealing with: Razor Fennex, heir to the immortal Fennex household, famed for their control over fire. Riaz, meanwhile, found herself inhaling sharply in shock. The unexpected move from the unfamiliar black-haired boy was something she never could have predicted. She hadn't noticed the rock itself, but she clearly saw him release it the moment Razor's attention shifted away. "I'm not sure what you mean, Razor-sama," Itachi replied calmly, shaking his head. From my perspective, you were struck from behind. How could I possibly throw a rock at the back of your head while I'm facing you? His question was delivered with such composed logic that Razor's eyes widened in surprise. This isn't over, do you hear me? Razor spat, his voice filled with irritation, before turning on his heel and storming off with his followers. I'll speak to you later, Riaz, he added over his shoulder to the crimson-haired heiress of the Gremory household. Entitled brats, Itachi muttered under his breath before beginning to walk away. Wait, Riaz called out, quickly closing the distance and catching his shoulder. I want to speak with you. Yes, Riaz-sama. Itachi turned to face her, his height a little greater than hers, likely because she was still younger. What's your name? Riaz asked, her voice carrying excitement. I don't remember ever seeing you around before. My name is Itachi Uchida, Riaz-sama, he answered. My parents serve in your household. I came to deliver the hat my father forgot this morning. He raised the hat in his hand for her to see. Uchida, you mean Ikaru Uchida-san is your father? Her eyes lit up instantly. He's the one who sneaks me candies. And he makes amazing food. I understand now, Itachi nodded thoughtfully. So that explained why his father always packed extra candy before work. Being a fan of sweets himself, Itachi always kept a stash in his room to enjoy while reading. Well then, if you'll excuse me, I need to. Hold on, Itachi-kun. Thank you for stepping in and helping me against Razor, Riaz said with a bright, innocent smile. Also, could you show me how to do that rock trick? She mimed flicking something with her fingers, her eyes shining with curiosity. Like any child, she was thrilled by such a display, just as his younger brother Sasuke had been after seeing it. A faint smile tugged at his lips as Itachi beckoned her closer with his hand. Riaz, intrigued, stepped forward without hesitation. Poke. She blinked in surprise, holding her forehead where he had gently tapped her with his index and middle finger. Huh, she murmured, puzzled. Forgive me, Riaz-sama, maybe another time, he replied with a faint smile before turning away. So that was Riaz Gremory, cute girl, he thought, not in any inappropriate way, but with the detached amusement of someone far older trapped in a child's body. Even an adult would have to admit she would grow into someone capable of breaking hearts. Time skip, 6 years later. Itachi-kun, play with me, called out a cheerful 10-year-old Riaz Gremory, bouncing with energy as she stood behind the boy she proudly considered her best friend, her arms loaded with toys. All right, Riaz-sama, Itachi replied, closing the book he'd been reading. Rising from the bench, he turned to face her. She beamed and quickly dropped to her knees on the soft grass of the Gremory estate's garden. How has your day been, Riaz-sama? He asked with a gentle smile, sitting down across from her and picking up one of her toys, an action figure from a well-known anime. School is boring Tilda, she groaned dramatically. They're teaching things I already know, and Razor is being mean to me again. Like most high-ranking young devils, Riaz had been receiving private tutoring since the age of 4. Being gifted, she had quickly absorbed all her lessons, which made formal classes seem trivial. Still, at 10, she attended a prestigious academy for wealthy children, a school with far better facilities than the one Itachi went to, though that hardly mattered to him. From the moment Itachi had stepped in to protect her from Razor Phoenix years earlier, and impressed her with that intriguing rock trick, Riaz had developed a fondness for his company. Whenever he refused her invitations, preferring to stay home reading or training, she went straight to her parents, convincing them to hire him as her official playmate. They then approached his parents with the arrangement, ensuring that he would spend time at the Gremory estate. The idea was welcomed by both families. Lord and Lady Gremory believed it would benefit their daughter to have a close friend outside the circles of noble houses, especially since he was the child of 2 of their most trusted retainers, Fiona, personal maid to Venelana Gremory, and Ikaru, the household's favorite chef who had even given Lord Gremory tips in cooking. Itachi's parents agreed as well, hoping their son would interact with more people instead of burying himself entirely in books. And of course, it wasn't every day that the daughter of the Gremory family wanted to be friends with a servant's child. When Itachi was younger, he rarely had opportunities to spend time playing with Sasuke. However, when it came to Riaz, who was 10 at the time, he knew exactly how to keep her entertained. During his stays at the Gremory estate, He often took the time to patiently explain things to her. Everything from small, everyday curiosities to lessons she found confusing from her tutor or school. Over time, she came to feel almost like his little sister, and he treated her with the same care and protectiveness an older brother would. Still, interacting with Riaz was a completely different challenge compared to dealing with Sasuke's typical childish antics. It often took considerable effort just to keep the spirited, crimson-haired young heiress from becoming too overexcited. "I see, did he try anything toward you?" Itachi asked. Razor, who was 7 years older than Riaz, would have been 12 at that time. Despite already being her fiancé, he was infamous for his playboy tendencies at school. Even Itachi had heard about his reputation from the girls in his class, who gossiped about the third son of the Phoenix family. From what Riaz had told him, her fiancé saw her as little more than a cute face, with his attention driven purely by his assumption that she would one day grow into a very curvaceous woman. For Riaz, who had grown up believing in fairy tale romances and dreamed of marrying a gallant knight, this reality was irritating and disappointing. From the day they first met and the engagement was announced, she had taken an instant dislike to him. "Of course," Riaz replied with a pout before her lips curved into a bright smile. She twisted her hands slightly as she continued, "But when he tried to grab me, I used that awesome trick you taught me and flipped him to the ground. You should have seen his face, it was priceless." "I see." Itachi allowed a small smile and gave a slow nod. "That's good to hear, Riaz-sama." The move she referred to was a simple self-defense technique he had taught her. In his view, no matter their age, girls should always know at least the basics of protecting themselves. "Itachi, can you show me another move?" Riaz asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I want to be able to send Razor flying every time he comes near me." "I don't think that's the best idea, Riaz-sama," he replied, shaking his head. Riaz's shoulders sank into a pout. "If your parents find out I've been teaching you more dangerous techniques, they might forbid me from visiting. You wouldn't want that, would you?" At that, she quickly shook her head. "For now, stick to the wrist twist I taught you. When you're older, I'll teach you something more advanced. Like the rock-throwing technique." "Like the rock-throwing technique," he affirmed without hesitation. "Yay!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms up in celebration. She then dove into her pile of toys, pulling out a box of Lego pieces. "I got this yesterday. How about we make a house together?" Without waiting for an answer, she emptied the colorful blocks onto the floor. "Right behind you, Riaz-sama," Itachi said, picking up a few pieces. They worked quickly, and within only 5 minutes, they had completed the first 2 floors. The game was popular among young devils in the underworld because the set provided a nearly limitless number of blocks that could be used to recreate any structure stored in its magical memory. The catch was that if even a single piece was placed incorrectly or was different from the original blueprint, the entire structure would collapse, forcing them to start from scratch. It was a surprisingly complex challenge for someone Riaz's age, but she handled it well. This time, they decided to replicate Lilith Castle, the palace of her brother in the capital city of Lilith. "There we go," Itachi said with satisfaction as he fixed the final block atop the tallest tower. "Well done, Riaz-sama." He stepped down from the massive structure, which was taller than both of them combined, and with his meticulous handiwork, the details were astonishingly precise. "Yay!" she cheered with delight. "Riaz-sama," came a voice from above them. They looked up to see Fiona, Itachi's mother, dressed in the Gremory family's black, white, and crimson maid uniform. She bowed respectfully to Riaz before turning a warm smile toward her son. "Itachi-kun." "Hello, Ka-sama," Itachi greeted her with a smile of his own. "Look, Fiona. We made this together," Riaz said excitedly, pointing at the castle with both hands and bouncing on her toes. "It's amazing, right, isn't it?" "Yes, Aju-sama, it's very beautiful," Fiona replied warmly. Then her tone shifted to a more formal one. "However, Aju-sama, your tutor has arrived. It's time for your lesson." Riaz groaned in protest. "But I want to keep playing with Itachi. Can't we skip it just for today?" She clasped her hands together in an exaggerated pleading gesture. "I'm sorry, Aju-sama, but that's not possible," Fiona began. Riaz turned away with a huff, making it clear she had no intention of leaving. Fiona sighed and glanced toward her son for help, knowing full well the young Gremory heiress could be incredibly stubborn. "Riaz-sama, you should go," Itachi advised gently. It's never wise to miss your lessons. Riaz pouted softly, her voice carrying a playful whine. But I still want to play with you. She clearly had no desire to leave, enjoying herself far too much in the company of her new companions. Her crimson hair swayed as an idea lit up in her mind, a sly grin curling on her lips. She turned toward Itachi. Then why not have you join me too? I'm sure Miss Jenna wouldn't object. I would, but I have school in just a few hours, Riaz-sama, Itachi replied calmly. Ria's lips drooped into a pout, her cheeks puffing up in an almost childish display of stubbornness as she folded her arms over her chest. Sigh. Itachi couldn't help but think how her determination reminded him of Sasuke's when they were younger. Still, he spoke gently. Riaz-sama. He lifted his hand, and as soon as Riaz looked back at him, he tapped her forehead with 2 fingers. The sudden motion caught her off guard. Sorry, but we should save this for another time, all right? Tilda, quit poking me, Itachi. It's not fun, she grumbled, rubbing the spot on her forehead. But despite her protest, she gave a small nod, smiling faintly at the thought of having something to look forward to. Next time, she agreed, before turning to follow Fiona into the house. She gave a final wave to the black-haired boy, who vanished into a puff of smoke moments later. The real Itachi, however, was far from that scene. He was wandering through one of the underworld's most ancient and renowned cities, Lilith, the capital itself. Though it wasn't far from Gremory Castle, the place was far livelier and far more crowded than his home city. Lucifad had once served as the original capital, but with the rise of the new Mao, the central hub of the underworld shifted here. Surzech Lucifer had relocated with his retainers, naming the city in honor of Lilith, the mother of all devils, who had long since passed away. A set of 5 dango, please, Itachi requested, handing over the payment to the vendor at a busy street stall. As he accepted the treat, he felt the sudden end of his clone's existence, along with the accompanying memories of spending time with Riaz. He didn't dislike her company, but he considered his current errands more pressing. A clone was more than enough to keep her entertained. Thanks, he added, offering a faint smile before continuing his walk, the small box of dango in hand. Roaming the streets of the underworld while enjoying his favorite snack had become something of a pastime for him ever since he arrived on Earth. The devils were fascinating, their culture, their use of magic, and their unique occupation known as devil jobs, in which they fulfilled the wishes of clients, most often humans, though other beings occasionally sought their services as well. In exchange for granting these requests, devils once took souls as payment. But under the governance of the current Mao, they now accepted money or other forms of reward instead. Itachi found the concept reminiscent of shinobi missions and client requests from his past life. Though he was too young to take on such jobs himself, the similarities intrigued him. Another reason he enjoyed these walks was anonymity. Here, as Itachi Uchida, he was just another devil among thousands, an ordinary face, regardless of the mature mind and memories he carried from another world. His attention was caught mid-bite as he spotted a large gathering ahead. A crowd of devils, young and old, male and female, had formed, their cheers and shouts filling the air. Occasional flashes of light lit the scene, suggesting that perhaps some celebrity or notable figure was present. Curiosity piqued, Itachi slipped through the mass of bodies until he reached the front, and his eyes widened at the sight before him. White panties, plain as day. It was as if the universe had chosen that exact moment to smack him in the face. What the? He muttered under his breath, eyes shifting upward to see the one responsible for attracting all the attention. She was clearly enjoying the display, her confident smile matching her bold posture. The young devil was strikingly pretty, with long black hair tied into high twin tails and bright blue eyes. Her outfit was a frilly, magical girl-style costume in pastel pink, leaving much of her midriff exposed. She carried a wand topped with a large yellow star, completing the look. But the most outrageous detail, aside from how casually she flaunted herself, was her figure. Despite having a petite, almost childlike build and standing only a few inches taller than Itachi, she possessed an absurdly large chest for someone her age. Each motion caused them to bounce and sway in exaggerated fashion, inevitably becoming the main attraction for the gathered onlookers. Weirdo, Itachi muttered at last. Without further interest, he turned away, deciding there was still more of the city left to see. Still, there was something oddly familiar about that girl. His unusual behavior and words, which contrasted sharply with the enthusiasm of the surrounding crowd, did not escape the attention of the magical girl, none other than Seraphal Leviathan herself. She murmured in surprise as her gaze followed him walking away. The complete lack of interest in her presence, coupled with his slightly long hairstyle for a boy, almost made her mistake him for her beloved little sister at first glance. "Hey, hold on you there," she called out, but her voice was drowned in the noise of the people around her. Accepting that he wouldn't hear her this way, Seraphal gave the crowd a few last alluring poses before lifting her hand in a cheerful wave. "Thank you, everyone. You've been amazing, but Leviathan has to head off now," she said brightly. A chorus of disappointed sighs rose from the fans, but they stepped aside to make way for her. Once the path cleared, she quickly pursued the boy, spotting him heading into a nearby park. It didn't take long, barely a few seconds, before she was close enough to reach out toward him. "Hey, wait," she called again. The moment Itachi sensed rapid movement approaching along with a feminine voice directed at him, he smoothly sidestepped and caught the intruding hand in his own. With a swift motion, he twisted her wrist, intending to throw the person off balance and send them to the ground. To his surprise, the girl in front of him didn't budge, and her wrist remained completely unaffected by his grip. "Eh, eh," they both voiced in unison. Then, with a bright smile and a friendly wave, Seraphal greeted, "Hi." Now that she was up close, she realized the boy's face resembled her sister's even more, same composed demeanor, the only real difference being the color of their eyes. "Who are you?" Itachi asked directly as he released her hand, recognizing her as the one from earlier. Seraphal's eyes widened slightly. Normally, even children who didn't know her actual Mao form from historical records would still recognize her from her television program. As Mao of Foreign Affairs and a practiced actress, she could easily spot deception, yet from his expression and tone, she could tell he was genuinely unaware. "You want to know my name?" Seraphal replied with a playful wink. She stepped back, twirling on her heel as she began her signature routine. By the blessing of the stars, her skirt spun with her movement, flashing her undergarments to the open air. "I'll wipe away the darkness," she declared, swinging her staff in a flourish before leaning back and striking a peace sign with a wink. "Because I'm Miracle Leviathan." "Leviathan," Itachi repeated. Seraphal beamed and nodded. The name rang a bell. Riaz had mentioned that it was from a hugely popular children's show, though much of its audience consisted of adults drawn in by the heroine's charm. Understanding clicked for Itachi. "I see. Nice to meet you, then." "I'm Itachi Uchida," he said politely. Seraphal groaned, pressing a hand to her forehead. Nay, you really don't know me," she asked in disbelief, straightening up. "You seem vaguely familiar, but I can't recall seeing you before," he admitted. "Are you an entertainer, a film star?" "I'm both," she answered with another wink. "From now on, just call me Leviathan." "All right," he replied simply. "Mutilda, what's with that deadpan reaction?" Seraphal pouted, pressing her fists beneath her chin as she hopped around him playfully. "You're just like Sotan, It-chan, so calm, so blunt, even that composed face," she teased. But rather than sounding offended, she looked delighted. "You're like a boy version of her, so adorable Tilda," she giggled. "What am I even doing here?" Itachi thought, sweat dropping. Deciding to end the interaction, he said, "Leviathan, I think I'll head off now. I need to get home before school." It was an excuse. He planned to have a clone handle that, but it would do. Tilda," her cheerful expression dimmed into a pout. "But I wanted to chat more, Tilda, maybe spend a little extra time with you, Tilda. You're interesting, It-chan." She reached to hug him, but he calmly picked up his dango skewer and lightly tapped her hand, prompting her to draw it back in mild surprise. "Leviathan, whether you're a fan or not, showing that level of affection to someone you've just met isn't wise," he said plainly. "And please, call me Itachi." Her face shifted into a disappointed yet childish pout that reminded him of Ria's Gremory's expressions. Then his eyes drifted to the dango box in his hand. There was still one stick left. "Chem," Seraphal's eyes lit up as he held it out. "Is that for me?" she asked, pointing at herself with a grin. When he nodded, she eagerly accepted it from him. "Thank you. That should lift your spirits." Itachi gave a faint smile before casually tossing the small box into a trash bin located 5 feet away, doing so over his shoulder without even looking, an act that left Serafal momentarily taken aback. "I'll be seeing you later, Leviathan." With those parting words, he turned on his heel and strolled away, summoning his black wings in one smooth motion before taking to the air and disappearing into the open sky. What a peculiar young man, Serafal thought to herself, unable to shake the impression as she continued to nibble on the dango he had given her, her gaze following him until he vanished from view. Time skip 2 years later. With his eyes closed, Itachi leaned forward and allowed himself to fall from the edge of a high cliff. For most 13-year-olds, such an action would be pure recklessness, and for a young devil like him, the natural instinct would be to unfurl his wings to slow the descent. But Itachi chose otherwise. Instead, a subtle flick of his wrists brought 3 kunai into his hands, each gripped between his fingers with practiced precision. Without glancing back, he extended both arms and launched the weapons towards several pre-marked spots on the forest floor far below. Using 2 additional kunai, he jammed the blades into the rock face, slowing his fall with calculated control. At roughly 20 feet above the ground, his feet pressed against the cliff wall, and he sprang backward in a clean mid-air flip. While still rotating, he hurled another kunai toward nearly invisible strands of wire stretched in the area. The strike severed them, triggering the traps he had set up earlier. From hidden mechanisms, 4 spring-loaded platforms erupted from the earth, firing a rain of kunai from all directions. The young Uchiha sidestepped the initial volley from the front, his movements sharp and efficient, catching 2 of the incoming blades mid-flight and immediately returning them toward the waves of projectiles from both his left and right. The deflected kunai knocked the others off course, buying him the time to leap clear of the final set hurtling from behind. They whistled past harmlessly, embedding themselves in the dirt. A faint, satisfied smile touched his lips. Years of relentless training, in body, mind, and magic, had pushed him far beyond what most devils his age could achieve. His skills now rivaled, even surpassed, those of high-class devils twice his age. Landing lightly, Itachi began retrieving his weapons. Each kunai was handmade from steel scavenged in the underworld's refuse sites, forged without chakra metal, a resource he doubted even existed in this realm. Alongside dozens of kunai, he had crafted shuriken and other ninja tools through days of patient work, sometimes using katen techniques to refine the metal. More than once, he had skipped school entirely to focus on forging them. A sudden noise snapped him from his thoughts. Without hesitation, he whipped around and let a kunai fly with blinding speed. "Eh!" The blade whistled past Ria's Gremory's face, grazing a few strands of her hair before embedding into the trunk beside her. The attack was so fast she hadn't even seen the weapon, only felt the sudden rush of displaced air. "Ria's Sama." Itachi's eyes widened slightly in a feigned look of surprise. "What are you doing here?" This part of the Far East Gremory territory was his personal training ground, several miles from her home. "I tracked you down, Itachi," she replied, pausing briefly before adding, "Well, Enku helped me find you. He's waiting outside the forest." Enku, once her brother's pawn, had become her escort a year earlier after she decided her home life was too dull and began frequently visiting Itachi's residence. Today, she had likely stopped by his home first, discovered his absence, and enlisted the Kirin to lead her here. At 12 years old, Ria's had grown noticeably more beautiful each year, increasingly resembling her mother, a gracious, responsible woman whom Itachi met often. One thing he had quietly observed. Over the last year, she had matured unusually quickly, her figure developing faster than girls several years her senior. Though physical beauty was far from the only thing he valued in a person, even he could not deny her striking presence. "I see." Itachi gave a short nod before bending to retrieve another kunai. "Please wait a moment." "Let me help you, Itachi," she said cheerfully, darting forward and lightly pushing him aside so she could scoop up the weapon herself. She moved quickly, gathering several more with a bright smile. "Are these weapons?" she asked curiously, glancing down at the bundle in her hands. "Yes, so please handle them carefully, Ria-sama." She nodded energetically and continued picking them up. With her assistance, the task was completed in less than half a minute. Itachi then stored the collection into his dimensional space with a simple storage spell. "What brings you out here all by yourself?" Riaz asked, her gaze fixed on Itachi as he carefully gathered a set of extremely thin, almost transparent wires, something he always preferred handling alone. Practicing with knives and wires again, she added with a slight tilt of her head, genuinely puzzled why he didn't choose something flashier, especially since he had already shown her countless impressive techniques and seemed skilled at nearly everything. They're called kunai Ryas-sama, Itachi replied with a small, calm smile. And yes, I'm training. Can't have myself falling behind you, can I? His words made Ryas beam, nodding enthusiastically. What about you? Have you been keeping up with your magic training, Ryas-sama? Of course I have, Ryas answered proudly, pushing her chest forward. Oniai-sama always says training is important, even for high-class devils like us. We shouldn't just depend on the abilities we're born with, we should keep improving. Itachi gave an approving nod. I'm proud of the power I have, but I want to become even stronger. For devils of noble, pureblood heritage like Ryas, inheriting exceptional abilities from their parents was normal, and many saw no reason to train harder. They often believed their natural gifts were already enough. Razor Phoenix, Ryas' fiancé, was a perfect example of that mindset. They're all done, Itachi said at last, storing away the wire with a practice spell. We should leave. This area isn't exactly safe. Ryas agreed with a nod, following his lead. The two began making their way out of the forest along a small trail Itachi had cleared during an earlier visit, a path he preferred using to avoid unnecessary run-ins with dangerous wildlife or stray devils. Nay, did you know today's a special day for me? Ryas suddenly spoke up, starting a new conversation. I'm finally going to get my own set of evil pieces. That's wonderful news. Congratulations, Ryas-sama, Itachi replied with a warm smile. Thank you, she said sincerely. Are you looking forward to it? Absolutely, she exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement, making Itachi chuckle softly. I can't wait to build my own peerage, servants who'll be like family to me, and train with them so we all get stronger together. Her small fists clenched as a determined smile spread across her face. I'm going to have the most powerful peerage and win every single raiding game. Ever since she'd learned how thrilling those matches could be, she dreamed of both leading the strongest team and someday becoming the next head of the Gremory household. I see, then I wish you all the luck in the world, Ryas-sama, Itachi said sincerely. She had both determination and courage, more than enough to make her ambitions reality. To his surprise, Ryas suddenly became fidgety, avoiding his eyes and nervously playing with her hands, as though she had something to say but couldn't quite bring herself to say it. What's wrong, Ryas-sama? He asked, puzzled. She was usually cheerful and confident for her age, so this hesitant behavior was unusual. Well, I was wondering when I get my evil pieces, she blurted out in a rush. Willie, I'll become my first servant, Itachi. Come again. Would you become my first servant, Itachi? She repeated more slowly. Then, as if realizing she might have been too forward, she stepped directly into his path, stopping him from walking. I'm sorry. You don't have to if you don't want to, it's just. Her voice trailed off as she turned away again, nervously fiddling with her fingers, completely missing the sudden alertness in Itachi's eyes as he looked sharply to the side. Watch out! Without warning, a massive bear, easily the size of a small house, burst from the left side of the trail, splintering entire rows of trees as it charged at them with terrifying speed. It let out a thunderous roar when its eyes locked on Itachi. Ryas froze instantly, her breath catching as the beast's shadow fell over her. Her limbs refused to move, her mind paralyzed with fear. Before the creature's massive claws could tear into her, Itachi darted forward, thrusting his open palm straight into its chest. The strike looked simple, but it was in fact a precise Juken technique. Though the blow didn't cause any visible wounds, the chakra he had driven into the bear's system caused it immense internal pain. The beast roared in agony and staggered backward. With one last glare full of rage, it turned and crashed back into the forest, disappearing after a few moments. Are you hurt, Ryas-sama? Itachi asked, his voice full of concern. That was, Ryas started, still staring wide-eyed at him, then her face lit up. So cool, she shouted with excitement. You stopped that huge bear with just a palm strike. How did you do that? Can you teach me that move? I'm not convinced this is a wise idea, Ryas-sama. Itachi gave a slow shake of his head, prompting Ryas to puff her cheeks in annoyance. Mu tilde. Why do you always give me that same reply? She complained, folding her arms while her crimson eyes narrowed in frustration. You told me that when I got older, you'd show me something much stronger, didn't you? She huffed, looking away with exaggerated drama. Fine then, if you won't teach me that awesome move, I'm not going to spend time with you anymore. Itachi let out a soft sigh but couldn't stop a faint smile from forming. Moments like this reminded him so much of how Sasuke acted when he was small. We should head back, Rias-sama, before that bear. I'm not moving until you show me how it's done. Her defiance didn't catch him off guard. In fact, he had been expecting exactly that. Rias-sama, he called, motioning for her to come closer with a calm wave of his hand. She eagerly obeyed, a wide grin on her face. But the instant she was within reach, he extended a finger and lightly tapped her forehead, a familiar gesture he'd repeated countless times over the past few years. "Eh!" Rias let out a disappointed groan, already knowing what would come next. "My apologies, Rias-sama," Itachi said with a quiet chuckle. "Perhaps another time." "Why must there always be an another time?" she protested, cheeks puffed out once again. "Can't it be now? There will be a time, Rias-sama, but when that day arrives, well, you'll see." He gave a small shrug, turning on his heel. "Come now, Rias-san, let's go before Nkusan starts worrying about your safety." "Hey, you didn't answer me properly, Itachi," she shouted, hurrying after him. Later that day, Rias spoke in a burst of enthusiasm. "So, Itachi," she motioned toward the shelf behind her, eyes sparkling. "What do you think of my latest collection?" Itachi's gaze moved over rows of manga, stacks of anime DVDs, and carefully arranged figurines. He could only manage a small sweat drop at the sheer scale of it all. "It's very impressive, Rias-sama," he replied. That was the safest answer he could think of. He was already aware that Rias was a devoted otaku, perhaps one of the most passionate admirers of Japan he'd ever met, and that she had spent years gathering an extensive array of Japanese memorabilia and artifacts in her room. "Mutilda, what's with that expression?" Rias pouted, narrowing her eyes at him. "You're supposed to say, 'That's amazing, Rias-sama, I really love it. How did you collect all this so quickly?' You know, something like that." "All right, I'll remember for next time," Itachi said with a small nod. "HMPH, I'll let it slide for now." She pointed at him dramatically before continuing, "Because today, Sona is coming over to hang out and I'm going to introduce you to her." "Sona?" Itachi echoed curiously. "Ah, don't misunderstand," Rias blurted suddenly, catching him off guard. "She's just a childhood friend, and she's a girl, so there's no way I have any kind of romantic interest in her." Her voice rose defensively, leaving him staring back at her in silence. "I wasn't thinking that at all," he replied flatly. "Eh?" Her face flushed crimson almost instantly. Turning away, she covered her cheeks, clearly too embarrassed to meet his gaze. Itachi's expression didn't change, though a faint bead of sweat trailed down his temple. "Rias-sama, look at me for a moment," he said, and when she glanced his way, poke. His fingers tapped her forehead again. "Ah," Rias yelped as she landed on the floor but bounced back up in seconds, launching herself at him. "Moo! Itachi, you're so mean," she cried, lightly pounding on his chest. He fell onto his back without even flinching. "Sorry, but you looked so cute, I couldn't resist," he teased. "See cute?" Ria's ears felt hot as steam seemed to radiate from them. She turned away in a flustered state, her usual confidence replaced by shy fumbling. Getting to his feet, Itachi continued, "By the way, Rias-sama, I'm already aware of who Sona Citri is. Ka-sama mentioned that she often comes to visit you." "Yes. She's my best friend at school, though also my rival," Rias explained, poking his chest in mimicry of his own forehead tap. "It's a perfect chance for you to meet another high-class devil besides me. But keep in mind, Itachi, only the Gremory clan treats our servants warmly. Others might not be so friendly. Don't get overly familiar with her, understood?" "I understand," he agreed, though something in her tone hinted at a deeper meaning. Eventually, Sona Citri arrived and was waiting for them in the living room. Itachi and Rias stood before the large door, the young Gremory heiress fidgeting with anticipation at the thought of meeting her friend and rival once again. Standing just behind Rias, Itachi's mind wandered in quiet contemplation. He found himself curious about what kind of person Sona Citri might be. His encounters with high-ranking devils had been scarce, limited to Rias, her parents, and occasionally her older brother during visits to the Gremory estate. The last high-class devil he'd met, Razor Fenix, had perfectly matched the image of a prideful and indulgent devil he'd expected. Those musings evaporated the moment Riaz swung open the door, and a certain overly cheery, magical girl-like voice drifted out from inside the room. "Moo Tilda, Sotan Tilda, don't pout Tilda," came the playful whine of a woman whose voice he immediately recognized, much to his dismay. He froze on the spot. He wouldn't admit it proudly, but there was no mistaking that bubbly tone. "I am not pouting, one Sama. I am irritated you didn't bother changing into something more appropriate," replied the one called Sotan, whom Itachi assumed to be Sona Citri, her voice sharp enough to make most adults uneasy. The overly cheerful woman didn't seem fazed in the slightest. "But this outfit is adorable Tilda. Not wearing it would be the real sin Tilda," the magical girl, none other than the woman he'd met years ago, Leviathan, chirped happily. Sona regarded her older sister with narrowed eyes. "A devil talking about sins, one Sama, don't you think wearing something that ridiculous would corrupt whatever purity it's supposed to have?" she asked with biting sarcasm. Seraphal puffed her cheeks in mock offense and jabbed a finger towards Sona. "Moo Tilda, Sona-chan, you're so mean Tilda, just admit you want to wear one too." Sona nearly toppled off her seat. I have no desire to wear anything like that, one Sama," she retorted, her face turning crimson. Riaz, overhearing their exchange, couldn't help but giggle. Meanwhile, Itachi was silently berating himself for his slow realization. Leviathan, Leviathan, that could only mean Seraphal Leviathan. The living room door opened further and then, ah! Seraphal's gaze locked on him, followed by a dramatic "ah-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h." Her voice rang through the halls like a siren. "It's Itachian Tilda," she squealed before launching herself toward him at full speed. Unfortunately for her, Itachi had anticipated her movements the moment she shifted her weight. He moved just in time, sidestepping her charge. Seraphal's momentum sent her face first into the floor, and she slid along the ground until she smacked into the wall. Itachi grimaced at the unpleasant sound of impact. "That's going to hurt a lot," he muttered under his breath. Riaz and Sona simply stared, dumbfounded at the scene. Seraphal, now sprawled on the floor, lifted her head weakly. She had a small nosebleed and looked like she was on the verge of tears, which made Itachi approach cautiously. "Hey, are you all right, Seraphal Leviathan-sama?" he asked, crouching to her level with concern. "So," Sona began. "So," Itachi echoed. He stood on a step stool behind Seraphal, carefully wrapping a bandage around her head. For someone so powerful, her ability to get injured so easily was baffling. "Will you forgive my sister for her overly enthusiastic behavior?" Sona asked, clearly still trying to make sense of what had just happened. "Tee-hee Tilda." Seraphal simply stuck out her tongue, tapping her own head lightly. After Seraphal's botched attempt at greeting him, Fiona, Itachi's mother, had entered, helping tidy up and summoning a medical kit to tend to the wounded magical girl. None of them had expected that, the moment she regained her footing, Seraphal would cling to Itachi like a lost child, drawing a sharp glare from Riaz and apologetic bows from Sona. Once the treatment was over, Fiona excused herself, though Itachi swore he saw her stifling a laugh as she left. "It's really not that big of a deal," he assured, shaking his head. "Eh Tilda, it really is it tan Tilda," Seraphal sang in delight. Sona bowed again. "My deepest apologies for her actions." Ignoring her younger sister's attempts to paint her as a troublemaker, Seraphal gave Sona's shoulder a playful pat. "See, Sotan Tilda, he said it's fine, so everything's perfectly okay. Right, it tan?" she asked with a smile sweet enough to make most men falter. But Itachi was not most men. Without reacting to her charm, he simply placed both hands on her head and adjusted her posture. "Please hold still, Seraphal-sama," he instructed so he could finish bandaging her. "Ni it tan Tilda," she called again when she realized he was ignoring her. "For the record, Seraphal-sama," Itachi said evenly, "my name is Itachi Uchida. I don't recall ever being called it tan, or anything even close." "So, would it be fine if I start calling you Itachi-chan?" she asked curiously, tilting her head slightly. "I suppose that's acceptable," he replied calmly. He'd been called far worse before. With practiced precision, Itachi finished wrapping the bandage around her head, then took a clean towel to gently wipe away the streaks of blood on her forehead. Serafal's lips curved into a cheerful smile, humming happily as the boy carefully dabbed the blood from her cheeks. "Itachi," Riaz spoke up, her voice cutting into the moment and drawing his attention. "You seem to be getting rather close with Serafal-sama." There was a sharp edge to her tone, almost accusatory. Before Itachi could respond, Serafal jumped in with a playful gleam in her eyes. "Ooh, Tilda, is little Riaz-chan perhaps jealous?" she teased, her voice lilting with a mischievous giggle. Riaz began to retort, but her words caught in her throat. Her lips pressed into a thin line and her cheeks flushed red. "Honestly, Riaz, jealous of one Sama of all people," Sona chimed in, her voice dripping with mockery. "Ah, Sotan, and just what is that supposed to mean?" Serafal protested, puffing her cheeks slightly. "Exactly what you heard," Sona answered bluntly. Then she turned her attention back to Riaz, her tone taking on a sharper bite. "So my self-proclaimed rival is this delicate? Why don't you run off to Surzech-sama and have him spoil you again? Maybe this time you'll come back acting a little more mature." "Sona," Riaz shot to her feet, glaring furiously at her friend-turned opponent. "They're all done," Itachi announced, stepping back with a small smile. "Give it a few days or see a proper healer and you'll be perfectly fine, Serafal-sama." Hopping down from the chair, he neatly packed the remaining bandages back into the medical kit. "Ah, you're surprisingly skilled at this, Itachi-chan," Serafal said, lightly touching the fresh bandages. "It would be wonderful if I had a servant as attentive as you. One Sama, we need to talk." Sona folded her arms across her chest, motioning her sister toward the far side of the room. Once they were there, she began lecturing her in a low but firm tone. "Itachi," Riaz called, approaching him with a stance that screamed lecture incoming. "I'm well aware boys often have base impulses, but don't let them dictate your behavior." Itachi's sweat dropped inwardly. Where in the world did she pick up vocabulary like that? He knew devils learned quickly, far quicker than humans, and that conversations about intimacy were far from taboo for them. Still, hearing such mature phrasing from someone as young as Riaz was a first for him. His thoughts were interrupted when he realized her face was suddenly mere inches from his own. "Well, do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied without hesitation. Seemingly satisfied, Riaz walked over to join Sona, giving Itachi a rare moment to breathe before he followed after them. "So, Serafal-san, and you must be Sona Citri-sama, correct?" Itachi asked, interrupting the sisters' quiet squabble. "Yes, that's right," Sona replied. A faint blush dusted her cheeks before she composed herself with a small cough. Stepping forward, she introduced herself with impeccable form. "I realize I have yet to properly introduce myself. I am Sona Citri, second daughter and heir to the Citri clan. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance." She extended her hand. Itachi studied it briefly before taking it in a firm but respectful grip. "The pleasure is mine, Sona-sama," he said politely, knowing the importance of status among devils. "My name is Uchida Itachi, son of this household's maid and chef." "The blonde-haired maid who entered earlier?" Sona asked. Itachi nodded in confirmation. At least she wasn't immediately questioning Ria's association with someone of low standing. That alone told him she shared certain traits with Ria's and wasn't one of those stereotypical spoiled noble brats. "You could also call me Riaz-sama's lifelong babysitter," Itachi added with a small smirk. Sona almost laughed at the remark. "Itachi, what's that supposed to mean, babysitter?" Riaz asked, clearly offended. "It just means you've never really changed, and probably never will," Sona teased. "Goose!" Riaz grit her teeth before declaring, "Just wait. I'll become a refined, first-class lady one day, and then you'll have to take that back." "Sure. If that day ever comes," Sona replied with a wicked smile. "Coo!" Before the argument could heat up, Serafal suddenly bounced between them, twirling dramatically before making a peace sign with her tongue sticking out. "All right, Tilda, now it's time for the great magical Leviathan to make her grand introduction, Tilda," she sang theatrically. "We already know who you are, Serafal-sama," Itachi deadpanned. "Boo Tilda, Itachi-chan, you're no fun," she pouted, giggling as she gave him a thumbs down. After Serafal reintroduced herself, complete with her over-the-top magical girl routine, they all relocated to the garden, where the maids had prepared a small tea party. With a Mao's approval, even a servant like him was permitted to join them at the table. Teacups and delicate cakes adorned the round table, though none of them seemed particularly interested in the refreshments just yet. Instead of paying attention to anything else happening in the room, everyone's attention was fixed on the chessboard in front of them, specifically, on the match unfolding between Riaz and Sona. Itachi sat nearby, his eyes following the pieces with quiet amusement, the faintest of knowing smiles tugging at his lips. Riaz studied her rook briefly, weighing her options, before deciding to slide her bishop into a position that would place Sona's king in direct danger. Just as she anticipated, Sona didn't hesitate to counter. The queen swiftly captured the bishop. A hasty decision. Did you truly think I'd allow you to corner me that easily? Sona remarked with a smirk, idly twirling Ria's bishop between her fingers. Riaz puffed her cheeks in mild frustration and reached toward her knight, but before she could commit, Itachi's hand gently intercepted hers. He redirected it toward her pawn at e4. Place this one here, Riaz-sama, he instructed calmly, his fingertip tapping the square at f6. His tone left little room for debate, and it immediately drew everyone's attention toward him, Sona included. Riaz blinked, clearly confused. But it's such a minor piece and she could just do it, he cut in, eyes still fixed on the board. Though skeptical, she obeyed. Her pawn advanced from e4 to f6, and within seconds, her expression shifted, her lips curling into a slow smirk as the implication of the move dawned on her. Sona, realizing the threat, reluctantly pulled her knight back to avoid losing it to the pawn. Unfortunately, that retreat left a gap she hadn't anticipated. As if that could, Sona began, but stopped short when her eyes widened. Careless, Riaz said, her smirk widening as she slid her rook across the board to seize Sona's knight. Thanks, Itachi, she beamed at him, giving a playful thumbs up. I trust you've taken something from this, Riaz-sama, Itachi replied with a faint smile. A pawn may seem insignificant, yes, but when used with precision, it can rival even the queen in threat. You mean promotion? She asked. Something along those lines. You understand well enough. TCH, Sona clicked her tongue, her gaze narrowing as she recalculated her next approach. After several long moments, she advanced her queen 3 spaces. What's the plan, Sona? Riaz teased, her hand reaching for her bishop. Planning to hand me your queen as a gift? The chance to strike down Sona's strongest piece was too tempting to ignore. Wait, Itachi interrupted again, raising a hand. Move your bishop here instead. Though puzzled, Riaz complied. Sona, undeterred, pushed her queen forward again. Now shift your knight here, Itachi continued. The maneuver completely blocked the queen's attack line, forcing Sona to move a pawn instead. Next, advance your rook to this square, good. Now the queen here and finally, the knight right there. As soon as Riaz completed the final move, her eyes went wide. Checkmate, she declared triumphantly. Sona and Serafal both froze, their jaws dropping. I can't believe it, Sona admitted reluctantly. You, she exhaled sharply, still in disbelief. Riaz grinned like a victor basking in glory. You're brilliant, Itachi. I knew you were smart, but I didn't think you'd completely flip the game in my favor, especially against Sona, who's never lost, even to far more experienced players. You, Sona muttered, pointing at him as if the word alone carried all her frustration. Without warning, she slammed her palm down on the table so hard that the pieces rattled and the teacups nearly toppled over. That's it. If you think you're so clever, then face me directly. Don't speak to Itachi like that, Riaz shot back, glaring. I challenge you, Itachi Uchida. Sona cut her off, her tone sharp and resolute. Serafal's face lit up instantly. Oh, I love this idea. Let's find out which of you is the sharper mind. Itachi-chan clearly gave you a run for your money, So-tan, and I've never seen you lose like that. Why not settle it with a direct match? It's a Mao's wish, Sona growled, her gaze locked on Itachi. Well, what's your answer, Itachi-san? I accept your challenge, Sona-sama, he replied with his usual calm, already resetting the board. Inwardly, he mused, young, proud. If she'd been born a man, she'd be nearly identical to Sasuke, minus the part where I changed him. I'll take the black side. Oh, giving me the advantage, Sona asked, sitting down with confidence. With all due respect, Sona-sama, no, Itachi answered plainly. Serafal then grinned mischievously. Since we're raising the stakes, the winner gets a special hug from both Magical Leviathan and Riaz-chan Tilda. Itachi and Sona both froze in unison, while Riaz just stared at Serafal in confusion. Sona hesitated before asking, clearly bracing for the worst. "And the loser?" "Gets a double kiss on the face from us Tilda," Serafal replied cheerfully. The moment the words left her lips, Ria's cheeks flared crimson as her gaze darted between Sona and Itachi. Neither challenger responded immediately. Itachi simply exhaled and shook his head slightly, realizing the day had taken an unexpected turn. Sona, however, was quick to recover. "Let's begin." She slid her pawn forward. "I'll give everything I've got." "You don't have to be that intense, Sona-sama," Itachi replied lightly, moving his knight into play. "This is actually my first time playing chess." "Excuse me?" Sona asked, eyebrows rising as she moved her next pawn. "I usually play shogi online, but it's close enough to chess in many ways," Itachi said with a casual shrug. "Shogi? That's basically Japanese chess, right?" Riaz asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and excitement. "It's often called the general's game," Sona confirmed, giving a small nod before sliding her first bishop into position. 10 minutes into their match, Itachi studied the board carefully. A faint smile touched his lips. He was genuinely impressed. Sona's sharp thinking and keen observation stood far above what he'd seen from anyone her age. If she had 2 decades of rigorous study and real-life challenges ahead of her, he was certain she could rival, or even surpass, someone like Shikaku of the Nara clan. However, for all her intellect, there was still one crucial element she lacked: real battle-tested experience. That absence made her vulnerable to being subtly guided toward a particular outcome, and that's exactly what Itachi had been doing. Sona, unaware of the trap, smirked with confidence as she made her move. "You've played well, but with this." She slid her queen toward his king, preparing to place it down. "It's check." Her words trailed off as she froze mid-action, realizing she couldn't actually complete the move. But she'd already lifted the piece, and the rules dictated she had to play it. "An excellent match, Sona-sama," Itachi said politely, giving a small bow. "I truly learned a great deal from this game, but I'm afraid this is my victory." With precise motion, he moved his rook to capture her king. "A distraction. I engineered this position to lower your guard," he explained. "In a real battlefield, even if your king fell, you could still wipe out your opponent's forces. But chess ends the moment the king is gone." His tone shifted to one of seriousness. Serafal, watching from the side, stared at him in surprise. She hadn't expected such strategic insight from someone his age. He wasn't just smarter than her sister, he was far more perceptive than she had anticipated. Amazing," Sona muttered before exhaling in defeat. "I concede." "You're incredible, Itachi," Riaz beamed. "You actually beat Sona." "As if you'd managed the same without his help," Sona shot back, making Riaz frown and grit her teeth. Itachi, hearing his name, the Uchiha turned towards Serafal, surprised. She hadn't used any playful suffix like chan or tan. "Are you available?" she asked cryptically. His puzzled expression made her clarify. "I mean, you're not part of anyone's peerage, correct?" He nodded. "Then, would you like to serve under me?" Both Riaz and Sona were left open-mouthed, especially the crimson-haired heiress. Serafal reached into her pocket, producing a set of shimmering blue crystal chess pieces and placing them on the table. "You have extraordinary potential, Itachi. If you join me, I'll ensure you reach heights you've never imagined and more." Her smile this time wasn't lighthearted or teasing, it carried the authority of a true Mao. "So, what's your answer?" "Wait, Serafal-sama," Riaz interrupted quickly. "I plan to recruit him into my peerage once I get my evil pieces. You can't just take him." "Riaz-jan," Serafal's lips curled into a knowing smirk. "Are you challenging a Mao's will?" I, Riaz faltered, her head lowering in reluctant surrender. "Don't be upset," Serafal said warmly, pulling the girl into a hug. "I'm not taking him away from you." Itachi remained silent, still processing what had happened. He had always known the day would come when someone would recognize his value and offer him a position in exchange for status, privileges, and opportunity. Things a low-class devil could never achieve alone. What he never imagined was that such an offer would come from Serafal Leviathan herself. To him, the idea of eventually serving a high-class devil was inevitable. From birth as Itachi Uchida, his path was shaped much like his parents', his mother as a maid, his father as head chef to the Gremory household. That was simply the way devil society worked. Low-class devils had no voice unless they were in service to the powerful. The Gremory's employment kept his family secure, even if poor, and for that they were grateful. The real question was not if he'd serve someone, but who it would be. "So, what will it be, Itachi-chan?" Seraphal asked with a playful wink. "I won't force you, but you should know there's always a place waiting for you in my peerage." After a pause, Itachi finally spoke. Time skip. 1 year later. "So this is the human world," Itachi murmured as he gazed over a sprawling city in a country called Japan. Compared to his own village or any other in the elemental nations, its size was astonishing. Neon billboards lit up with a language identical to his own. A distant stadium throbbed with the sounds of a live concert, and at the city's heart, a towering red structure glowed brightly with decorative lights. While taking in the surroundings, Itachi found himself unimpressed by the city's overall design. His eyes drifted toward a congested roadway, and a faint frown crossed his face. The city planners really should have considered the road layout more carefully, he thought, shaking his head in silent disapproval. His remark, however, went unnoticed. His companion was far too absorbed in the scenery to pay him any mind. "Hey, Itachi, that tall tower over there looks like a giant Christmas tree," Ria's Gremory called out with genuine excitement, pointing toward a crimson tower in the distance. "You know, it actually does," he admitted, smiling faintly at her observation. "Your imagination is remarkable, Ria-sama." It amazed him how much Ria's had changed over the last 2 years. Her rapid growth almost seemed unnatural, like she experienced a growth spurt every couple of weeks. At just 13, she was already ahead of most girls her age in appearance, elegance, and unavoidably noticeable, her figure. At first, Itachi had assumed that such development was a quirk of being a female devil. Yet, after observing others like Sona and various girls at his school, he began to think it might be influenced by diet, or perhaps it was simply inherited from her mother, who was equally stunning. It wasn't an inappropriate thought, just a curiosity about how human and devil physiology differed. The two of them were currently exploring a Japanese town. Itachi, having never visited the human world before, couldn't deny the anxious flutter in his chest. Still, he felt grateful to Ria's for inviting him, and equally thankful to her parents for trusting her safety under his care. After all, he served as one of Seraphal Leviathan's subordinates. "You're teasing me, aren't you?" Ria's asked with a pout, narrowing her eyes at him. "I'm not," he replied without hesitation. "HMPH, I can't even tell if you're being truthful anymore," she huffed, though the faint smile tugging at her lips betrayed her annoyance. Glancing around, Itachi spoke again. "Didn't you say you wanted to explore the entire city, Ria-sama? We've only got a few hours left before Enkusan comes to collect us." "Ah, you're right. How about we head over there? Looks like we could see the whole city from that spot," she said, pointing toward a shrine perched on a nearby mountain slope. Without waiting for his agreement, she took his hand and began leading him toward her chosen destination. "Oh wow, Tilda, the whole city is visible from here," Ria's exclaimed with childlike enthusiasm as they reached the top of the shrine's long staircase. From up here, even Itachi had to admit the view was spectacular. The distant clusters of lights, the seasonal decorations, and the city's warm glow all blended together, creating an almost festive atmosphere. "Itachi, look, that's Kyo Academy over there," she pointed toward a building in the distance. "Kyo, that's the school jointly overseen by Lord Gremory and Lord Citri, correct?" he asked, to which Ria's gave a confirming nod. "Yes, Atusama and Sona's father established it so that young devils like me could live and study in the human world. At the moment, it's still an all-girls school, so no male devils or male students at all are allowed," she explained. "At the moment," Itachi echoed, raising an eyebrow. His attention, however, began to shift. He could feel a faint presence coming from the shrine itself. "Atusama and Lord Citri plan to make it co-ed soon," Ria's continued, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. She spoke a little softer then. "That way, you could attend with me, and we wouldn't have to be apart." But before she could finish basking in that thought, she noticed something strange. Itachi was no longer by her side. Spinning around, she spotted him standing several paces ahead, facing the shrine. Before she could question him, his voice rang out firmly. "I know you're there. I've been aware of you watching us for some time. No point in hiding, come out." Curious, Riaz turned toward the shrine. She wondered who Itachi might be addressing. Moments later, the shrine's door slid open. A young girl, roughly Ria's age, stepped into view. Her long black hair was tied in a simple ponytail, framing a delicate face. She wore a white one-piece dress, but it was stained and worn. The disheveled condition of both her clothing and her body made Ria's eyes widen. Bruises mottled her skin, small cuts marked her hands and feet, and faint swelling was visible here and there. The sight stirred immediate concern in Riaz, who looked at Itachi as if silently urging him to heal the girl at once. Itachi intended to help her, but he didn't want to frighten her by rushing forward too suddenly. The girl with black hair kept her gaze fixed on them. She seemed to be trying to speak, but before she could utter a word, Riaz stepped in first. "Are you hurt? Why are you out here all by yourself?" Riaz's voice carried genuine worry as she stepped forward. The sudden barrage of questions left the girl startled and speechless. Her eyes dropped to the ground, uncertain about whether she should answer these strangers. Picking up on the tension, Riaz offered a gentle smile and took the initiative to break the ice. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Riaz Gremory, and the man standing over there is Itachi Uchiha." She gestured toward him with an open hand. Instead of relaxing, the girl instinctively took a step back, her expression guarded. It's fine, Riaz-sama, please, let me take over," Itachi interjected before she could continue. He understood that she was trying to be kind, but her direct approach had only spooked the girl further. The young woman's eyes drifted toward the dark-haired man, curiosity flickering in her gaze, only for it to vanish the moment their eyes met. A wave of fear hit her instantly. Her breathing quickened, and she began to edge away, preparing to bolt. Before she could take more than a step, Itachi moved. His form blurred, vanishing from where he stood and reappearing behind her in a motion so swift Riaz couldn't track it. His left arm slid firmly around her neck while his right braced the back of her head. "This might sting a little," he said softly, easing her to the creaky wooden floor as his grip tightened. The girl's voice rose in panic. But Itachi cut off her cry by increasing the pressure, holding her securely until her struggles went limp and unconsciousness claimed her. When he turned back, Riaz was gaping at him with an expression that could only be described as deadpan disbelief. "Why would you do that?" she shouted, her voice echoing through the surrounding mountains. Birds scattered into the sky, and small animals dashed for cover at the sudden outburst. The girl's faint groan broke the silence as her eyelids fluttered open. Harsh sunlight slipped into her vision, forcing her to blink repeatedly until her sight adjusted. She realized she was lying on a futon inside one of the shrine's rooms. Attempting to sit up sent a dull ache through her body, and with a pained sigh, she sank back down. "So I'm still alive," she muttered in a tone that carried more disappointment than relief, eyes fixed blankly on the ceiling. "Naturally, ending your life was never my intention," came a calm male voice from nearby. Her muscles tensed immediately. She twisted her head toward the source, and her breath caught. It was the man who had subdued her earlier. Fear flashed across her face, and she scrambled upright, staring at him as if expecting the worst. Stay back," she pleaded, her voice trembling. But Itachi ignored the request and reached out, only for her to flinch and close her eyes, bracing herself for harm. Instead, the cool touch of a damp cloth pressed against her cheek. Slowly, she opened her eyes to see him gently wiping away dirt and grime from her face. "A moment ago, you spoke as if living was a disappointment," he remarked quietly. "Hold still. I'm not done treating your wounds." Though bewildered by his unexpectedly gentle behavior, she found her panic easing. "You don't intend to hurt me, do you?" Itachi let out a faint sigh as he dipped the cloth back into a bowl of steaming water. "Did you not hear me just now? You said you wouldn't kill me," she replied cautiously. "I also said I had no reason to harm you," he corrected with a small smile. "But you tried to choke me unconscious earlier. You were attempting to flee. That was the quickest, least painful way to stop you," he explained, tapping her forehead with his middle finger, not hard, but enough to make her blink. "Lesson 1, don't run from someone who's trying to help you." Her hand moved to rub the spot, and she noticed her arm was already neatly bandaged. The work was precise, almost professional. Confusion lingered, but the fear that had gripped her earlier was slowly melting away. "Raise your arms. I need to clean them next." Itachi turned toward the open first aid kit, pulling out fresh rolls of bandages. While tending to her injuries, he couldn't help but wonder what could have left her battered in such a way. Her wary eyes narrowed again. "And will this escalate?" He glanced over his shoulder, caught off guard. "What? I have a feeling you're going to ask me to strip next," she accused bluntly. To her surprise, he answered with complete composure. "Already done." Her face froze. Only then did she notice she was no longer wearing her dress, but instead had on his black jacket, which barely reached mid-thigh on her frame. "You were in bad shape," he said casually, wringing excess water from the towel. "I cleaned and dressed every wound before bandaging them. Still, you'll need proper treatment soon." The girl's hand shot up toward the man's face without hesitation. To her astonishment, Itachi intercepted the strike effortlessly, not even bothering to glance at her. "Enough," he said calmly, finally turning his head in her direction. "You won't recover if you keep resisting like this. Relax and let me take care of it." As he caught her other hand, he sighed softly. "Honestly, you might be one of the most headstrong people I've met." I don't need your help," she stammered, her cheeks burning crimson as her eyes welled up with tears. Right then, the sound of hurried footsteps approached, and Riaz stepped into the room carrying several paper bags. "Sorry for keeping you waiting. It took some effort to convince them to sell me everything on your list." Her cheerful tone faltered the moment she noticed the tearful expression on their new companion's face. Her gaze sharpened as she looked at Itachi. "What did you do?" Itachi began, but before he could explain, Riaz swept past him and dropped to a crouch at his side, her expression shifting into a half-lidded glare toward the young Uchida. "It's been, 2 hours since I left, and already you've upset this poor girl again," she chided, her voice carrying mild reproach. Then, with a slight pout, she muttered almost under her breath, "Even though I'm here with you." "Riaz-sama, you're mistaken," Itachi replied evenly, exhaling a faint sigh. His eyes shifted between Riaz and the girl, whose jaw was hanging open in shock. "We should probably explain the situation to her first." Riaz blinked, and the realization hit her like a splash of cold water. She had momentarily forgotten that there was a third person present in the shrine with them. "Ah, you too," the girl whispered, her gaze drifting to the wreckage Riaz had caused earlier, then back to the pair before her. "There's a reason for all this. The truth is," Riaz began, scrambling to come up with an excuse. But before she could finish, the girl's expression hardened into a glare full of raw loathing. "You're both fallen angels, aren't you?" she accused, her voice sharp and dripping with disdain. Itachi and Riaz exchanged a glance, neither speaking for a moment. "I understand now, so you're devils." Once Itachi had finished tending to her wounds, they managed to convince the girl to hear them out. She reluctantly agreed to sit and talk, changing out of Itachi's jacket into the clothes Riaz had brought. The two explained who they were, devils by nature. Riaz, the daughter of the prestigious Gremory family, and Itachi, the son of her family's retainers, tasked with being her friend and protector whenever she traveled far from home. They also revealed that Riaz was the younger sister of one of the Mao, Surzech Lucifer himself. Even with their words, the girl's suspicion lingered until they revealed their wings, proving they were not fallen angels. Only then did her hostility fade, replaced by a reluctant calm. She admitted that Itachi had never intended to harm her. He had been trying to treat her injuries all along. Ria's cheeks flushed with embarrassment at her earlier assumption, and she quickly looked away. So now you believe we're not your enemies, right?" Riaz asked with a small, hopeful smile. For the first time since meeting them, the girl's lips curved upward. "Yes, and," she said, bowing her head politely, "thank you. You tended my wounds and watched over me even though I was a stranger. I have nothing to offer in return except my sincere gratitude." Itachi's voice broke the moment of quiet. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she replied softly. "If you're familiar with fallen angels, does that mean you've had some dealings with them?" Her expression froze, lips pressing into a thin line. Riaz, sensing the tension, turned her gaze toward her as well. Silence stretched for several seconds before Itachi spoke again. "If it's too personal, I won't press you. My apologies if... My father is a fallen angel." The words dropped like ice into the air, chilling the room. "My mother was human." Dark, sleek feathers unfurled from her back as she finished speaking. Riaz drew in a quiet breath, but Itachi gave her a subtle gesture to remain silent. He studied her carefully before asking, "Half human, half fallen angel, is that why you despise them? Because they rejected you?" To his surprise, she shook her head. "I've lived among humans and they can be far crueler than fallen angels," she said plainly. Then her voice hardened, laced with venom. "No, what I can't forgive is that man, my father, for abandoning my mother and me, for leaving me with his blood in my veins." Her eyes brimmed over, tears slipping down her cheeks. Without hesitation, Riaz stepped forward, wrapping her arms around the girl and letting her cry quietly into her shoulder. "Why? Why didn't he save us? Why didn't he come for mother?" The young girl cried, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her face. Riaz sat beside her, softly rubbing her back in an effort to comfort her. Itachi, however, didn't share the same sympathetic approach. "You know, it's not really my place to speak on this," he began in a calm but firm tone, "but you'd have to be incredibly naive to truly believe your father simply turned his back on you while you were in danger." "What, Itachi?" Riaz exclaimed, eyes widening at his blunt words. She quickly shifted into an angry glare, clearly displeased. The girl froze in shock, unable to process his cold manner. Riaz released the girl from her embrace, rising to her feet and confronting him. "That's too far, Itachi. You should think about her feelings before throwing such harsh words." "Leave this to me, Riaz-sama," Itachi responded quietly, before directing his gaze back to the dark-haired girl. "Now, you say your father failed to protect you and your mother. But are you absolutely certain? Did you witness the truth yourself, or have you pieced together an assumption you've chosen to believe?" The question seemed to jolt the girl from her grief, anger flaring in her eyes. She glared at him with open hostility. Riaz glanced at her, wanting to speak, but bit her lip and sank heavily back into her seat, realizing this was no simple matter. "What could you possibly know about it? I told you he didn't come, or couldn't come," Itachi interrupted smoothly. "I may not know the full details of what happened that day, but don't allow your emotions to blind you from the actual truth. If you do, the consequences will be far uglier than you think. I can promise you that much." The girl was silent now, her jaw tightening. Slowly, she stepped closer to him, locking her eyes with his. "What is it?" Itachi asked. "Are you," she hesitated, "like me?" Ria's eyes widened at the unexpected question. "No," Itachi replied, "but I do understand your pain." His mind briefly wandered to his younger brother, the one he had burdened with a life built on lies. "I've seen what happens when someone is denied the truth. It eats away at you, twists you into something unrecognizable and dangerous." Her expression softened slightly, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. "If you really do understand, then tell me, how do I get rid of this hatred?" "Find your father," Itachi answered without hesitation. "Make certain you know what truly happened. You don't want to make a choice you'll regret forever based on half-truths. And if things are exactly as you suspect, then act however you see fit. I won't interfere beyond that. The choice will be yours." "I see," she murmured, lowering her gaze. When she looked up again, Itachi's hand suddenly flicked her forehead. "Ugh!" she yelped, grabbing her forehead with both hands. "One more thing," Itachi said evenly. "Never despise the blood that runs in your veins. That same blood carries your mother's essence as well. You do love your mother, don't you?" With watery eyes and a flushed forehead, she nodded. "Yes, then that's all I wanted to say." He offered a small smile before turning to the red-haired girl. "Riaz-sama, I'll leave the rest to you." "Ah, yes, of course." Riaz nodded, turning back to the girl. It occurred to her that they hadn't even asked her name yet. "First of all, what's your name?" Himejima Aquino," the girl answered slowly. "Aquino, I see." Riaz took a steadying breath before continuing. "Look, about what Itachi said, I apologize. I don't know what came over him, but deep down, he's actually a good person, well, a good devil. He only meant well." "I admit I lack tact in certain situations," Itachi commented, "but every word I spoke was chosen deliberately, Riaz-sama." Ignoring him, Riaz clasped Aquino's hands warmly. "Anyway, I know we've only met today, but I want you to understand something. We're here for you. We'll stand by you until you see your father, and even after that, we'll still be here." Itachi raised an eyebrow. "Not to question your intentions, Riaz-sama, but you can't exactly visit the human world every day. How do you plan to manage that?" With a confident smile, Riaz puffed out her chest. "Simple, we'll bring her home with us." "Well, I suppose you could, but..." For once, Itachi found himself at a loss for words. Her unshakable optimism always managed to surprise him. Riaz-san, was it? Aquino asked hesitantly. Just Riaz. All right, Riaz, wouldn't it cause problems if I went with you? Not at all. You can live with me at my house if you'd like. There's plenty of space. You could have a room entirely to yourself. Aquino's eyes dimmed slightly. But I'm half fallen angel. Even if you wanted to befriend me, that part of me would never change. To your kind, I'll always be tied to your enemies. We can't live together. Tilda, then all I need to do is make you a devil, Riaz said in a light-hearted, almost teasing tone. Aquino let out a small gasp, her eyes widening. You can actually do that, she asked, her voice laced with a hint of hope. Naturally, Riaz replied with a confident nod, pressing a hand against her chest with a self-assured smile. I am a devil, after all. I can fulfill every dark and tempting desire you could think of. Technically, we have certain tools known as evil pieces, Itachi interjected, causing Riaz to puff her cheeks in mild annoyance. Riaz-sama will go into the details later, but for now, all you need to understand is that she has the ability to make you her servant, a devil. Rising to his feet, he added, I'll leave the two of you to talk this over. This isn't a decision to take lightly. Before stepping away, he turned back to Aquino. Aquino, Chem, she responded softly. Choose carefully. Once you become a devil, there's no undoing it, Itachi said warmly. But if you do, then welcome to the family. With a gentle smile, he left the shrine, vanishing from their sight. Aquino was left momentarily speechless. Riaz, however, reached forward and clasped Aquino's hands, shaking them eagerly. That's right, you'll be part of our family. We'll be together every single day, Riaz said brightly. A faint smile tugged at Aquino's lips as she softly repeated the word family in her mind. After a moment, Aquino looked at Riaz, cheeks tinged pink. Is it going to hurt? She asked just as Riaz slid a hand into the pocket of her skirt. Not at all. And honestly, living as a devil isn't bad in the slightest. I mean the actual transformation, Aquino clarified. Oh, that. It should just feel like mild numbness for a couple of seconds. Riaz set down the box of evil pieces she had received a year ago between them. The pieces were a deep crimson, but one of the bishop pieces had delicate golden markings. After a quick assessment, the crimson-haired girl picked up the queen piece, only to let out a loud groan of frustration. Is something wrong? Aquino asked nervously. It's fine, Riaz said, shaking her head. I wanted to keep this one for Itachi. Itachi isn't your servant, Aquino asked in disbelief. He is, but not officially part of my peerage, Riaz explained. His mother works as my mother's maid, and his father is the head chef of our estate. We grew up together, and we've been best friends ever since. But he's already part of another peerage, she sighed. His master, Sarafal-sama, is incredibly powerful. One of my goals is to become strong enough to surpass her someday so I can trade for him. So, devils can trade servants? Yes. But I swore to myself I'd never trade away anyone in my peerage. Every one of my servants will be precious to me, Riaz declared, tapping her chest firmly. I've been saving this piece for Itachi, but I guess it can't be helped. She lifted her hand to proceed, only for Aquino to gently catch it. You don't have to, Riaz, Aquino said softly. Save that piece for him. It's all right, Riaz replied with a warm smile. I promised to bring you into my home so we could live together, and I don't break my promises. Besides, if Itachi were in my place, I'm sure he'd do the same. Yes, it's unfortunate, but I'll manage. I understand, Aquino nodded slowly. So what happens now? Just lie down, hold the piece to your chest, and I'll handle the rest. Once Aquino was officially transformed into a devil, Ria's queen, and her very first peerage member, they traveled to the underworld to introduce her to the Gremory family. The news was met with excitement, and a grand celebration was held that same night. Many influential devils attended, including Surzech Lucifer and his peerage. Among the guests was Razor Phoenix, accompanied by his queen. He congratulated Riaz on gaining such a beautiful servant, but before leaving, he made a smug promise about marrying her one day and threw a few subtle insults in Itachi's direction, along with a cold glare. Riaz was visibly irritated, but Itachi simply ignored the provocation and went to converse with his mother. That night, after helping his parents and the Gremory staff clean up the remains of the party, despite Ria's protests, Itachi returned home. Closing the door to his room, he reached into his pocket, took out an object, and placed it on the table before changing his clothes. It was a queen piece, an evil piece. Itachi-kun, may I have a word with you? The request originated from none other than Venelana Gremory, the esteemed matriarch of the Gremory family. With Rias occupied by her school assignments, Itachi had taken it upon himself to assist his mother and several of the household staff with their daily chores. Although they repeatedly told him there was no obligation for him to help, he remained adamant, preferring to use his spare moments making their tasks, especially his mother's, a little easier. Having once walked a path of blood and shadows, committing unspeakable acts in the name of a greater cause, Itachi now sought to spend this second chance at life giving whatever help he could. It was his way of making his days meaningful. "Fiona, may I borrow your son for a moment?" Venelana asked gently, spotting him working alongside her personal maid, Itachi's own mother, her lips curling into a pleasant smile. Itachi's gaze shifted to his mother, who returned the look with warmth before addressing the brown-haired noblewoman. "Of course, Venelana-sama," Fiona replied, dipping her head respectfully before encouraging him. "Go on with her, Sache-kun." "Yes, Ka-sama." He gave a small nod, then stepped toward Venelana's side. "Please lead the way, Venelana-sama." The two departed the room together, eventually stepping into the sprawling gardens behind the Gremory estate. There, Venelana began with a question. "Itachi-kun, are you aware that Rias will be going to the human world next year to enroll at Kyo Academy?" "Yes, Venelana-sama. She told me about it some months ago," he confirmed. Rias had explained her wish to live among humans during her time at Kyo, eager to experience life as an ordinary high school girl, and more importantly, to enjoy her youth without the constant weight of her noble title. Itachi saw no problem with her choice, fully understanding her reasoning. "To be honest, I wish she wouldn't go," Venelana admitted with a faint sigh, glancing toward the towering mansion. "Even as her mother, I can't fully comprehend why she wants to trade this for an apartment in the human realm. She already has everything here." "Sometimes, Venelana-sama, possessing everything doesn't mean you have what your heart truly wants," Itachi replied. "Ria-sama knows her duty as the future head of the Gremory family and takes pride in her name. But what she desires most is to live her youth to the fullest, not as Ria's Gremory of the Gremory clan, but as simply Ria's, a normal teenage girl. In the human world, where her identity remains unknown, she can have that. And she is rather fond of Japan. I imagine she'll want to spend a few years there." Venelana let out a soft laugh at the mention of her daughter's fascination. "It's her decision, and I respect it. Still, as her mother, I can't help but worry. Traditionally, she shouldn't leave home until she's older or married." She paused, turning her eyes toward him. "Tell me, Itachi-kun, what do you think of my daughter?" The question caught him slightly off guard, but he answered without hesitation. "Ria-sama is undeniably strong and highly intelligent," he began. "She values her friends and those close to her above all else. However, she also has a very gentle heart, so much so that disapproval or harm from someone dear to her can weigh on her deeply. That sensitivity could be a weakness for someone destined to lead. A leader must sometimes make painful choices for the greater good, even when it goes against personal feelings." He knew the weight of such decisions all too well, having once obeyed the order to eliminate his entire clan to preserve peace among the villages. Someone as kind-hearted as Rias might never be able to choose a path so harsh. "I see. You don't just understand her, you genuinely care for her, don't you?" Venelana asked with a small, knowing smile. "Yes," he replied immediately. "Though her station is far above mine, she is a dear friend. I see her almost like a younger sister. Whether or not she ever needs me, I will always be ready to support and protect her." "Such remarkable words from you, Itachi-kun," Venelana said, clearly impressed. "Now I understand why Serafal-sama wanted you as her servant. I have no doubt you will achieve greatness." "Thank you for the kind words, Venelana-sama." "I only speak the truth, young man," she said with a gentle smile, before adding, "Now then, Itachi-kun, may I ask a favor of you?" "Itachi, could I ask something of you?" Venelana's gentle but firm voice broke the quiet. "Anything you wish, Venelana-sama," Itachi replied with a respectful nod. "When Rias eventually moves to the human world, will you be there to watch over her to keep her safe?" she asked, her gaze steady. With no hesitation, Itachi inclined his head again, his tone unwavering. "It would be my honor, Venelana-sama. You've said yourself Ria's is bright, but she's still young and has much to learn. Having someone like you beside her, guiding her and shielding her from harm, puts my mind at ease." Venelana closed her eyes slightly, her voice softening. "Swear to me that, no matter what circumstances arise, you will remain at her side, protect her, fight for her, and never abandon her." "I give you my word, Venelana-sama." He was no Uzumaki Naruto, yet this wasn't a casual promise. It was a vow meant to last a lifetime. Itachi-sama, the familiar voices pulled him from his thoughts. Carrying a basket filled with laundry, the young Uchiha turned to see Rias walking with her queen, Himejima Akino. Both were smiling warmly as they approached. Over the past months, the two girls had grown inseparable, closer even than Rias and Itachi themselves. While Rias counted him as a dear friend, there were simply things a girl preferred to confide in another girl. 6 months had passed since Akino had officially become Ria's queen. The once reserved black-haired girl had quickly opened up, mingling easily with Rias, Itachi, and the other devils in their circle. She carried herself with grace and kindness, perfectly capable of presenting the poise of a noblewoman. Yet, Itachi had also noticed a rather unusual side to her. The first hint came when he caught her staring dreamily into a shop window, at a whip and collar, of all things. That suspicion had been confirmed later when he saw her dispatching a stray devil with disturbing delight, her expression blissful in a way that could only be described as inappropriate. Still, quirks were part of everyone's nature. "Rias-sama, Akino," Itachi greeted them with an easy smile. For reasons she refused to explain, Akino had begun addressing him with the honorific Sama only a week after joining the Gremory household. No matter how many times he told her it wasn't necessary, she would not relent. In her eyes, the respect was earned. While Rias had offered her a place to belong, Itachi had been the one to pull her from her bleak self-image and give her hope for the future. That, and the fact that he served under Seraphal Leviathan, cemented her belief he should be treated accordingly. Of course, Akino had no idea that his relationship with Seraphal was far more complicated than she imagined. "Hey there, Itachi," Rias greeted brightly, while Akino offered a gentle wave. "It's good to see you both as well." He returned the smile, glancing at Rias. "I trust your homework didn't give you too much trouble, Rias-sama. You know me, it was simple. I could have finished it in no time, but my tutor refused to let me go until every last piece was done." She puffed out her cheeks in irritation, folding her arms over her steadily developing chest. "I was looking forward to spending the morning with you, but instead—" "Rias-sama," Itachi beckoned her closer with his hand. When she leaned in curiously, he tapped her forehead with a single finger. She protested, rubbing the spot while Akino stifled a giggle. "What was that for?" "It's not wise to speak like that. Studies are important," he said evenly. "Even the simplest assignments matter. Dismissing them leads to carelessness, and—" All right, she interrupted, waving him off before he could finish what she called his long, boring speeches. His lectures, though filled with wisdom, often left her feeling foolish rather than brilliant, despite her reputation. "You need to stop overthinking everything. You'll end up old and bald if you keep this up." "I only speak the truth, Rias-sama," Itachi replied with a shrug. "Where are you headed?" she asked, noticing the basket in his hands. She had hoped to spend the rest of the day with him now that her work was done. "Just running some errands for my mother and the staff," he explained, glancing at the clothes. "I'm taking these to be washed." "Mutilda, you really don't have to handle chores like that," Rias complained lightly. "Rias-sama, if your servants needed help, would you lend them a hand?" "Of course. If it were for them, I'd give it my best," she answered without pause. "Then you see, it's no different for me. I'm a low-class devil and these are part of my duties." His tone softened. "Besides, my mother has more than enough work already. If I can lighten her load, I'm glad to do it." The young Uchiha offered her a small, sincere smile. "That's very kind of you, Itachi-sama," Akino said warmly, a gentle smile gracing her lips. Meanwhile, Rias was quietly making a mental note to speak with her mother about easing Fiona's workload so that Itachi wouldn't have to step in to help as often. "Well then, I'll leave you two for now. I still have to—" "Wait. Let me help you, Itachi." Rias suddenly chirped with enthusiasm, seizing the laundry basket with both hands, clearly determined to assist. "Oh, Riaz-sama, I'm not so sure." But, as he expected, Riaz gave a sudden tug, and the basket slipped right through his fingers. The contents spilled across the ground, scattering garments everywhere. Riaz froze, mortified as the soiled clothes lay in disarray. "Ah, I'm sorry, Itachi," she mumbled, bowing her head in embarrassment. Itachi let out a faint sigh and shook his head. Riaz's impulsive and childlike tendencies were always a challenge to handle. "It's fine," the reincarnated Uchiha replied, crouching to gather the scattered laundry and return it to the basket. "I'll give you a hand, Itachi-sama," Akino offered, kneeling to assist him. Riaz followed suit, though her expression shifted when her eyes fell upon a certain object among the mess. "Ara," Akino's soft gasp hinted she had noticed it too. "Itachi, would you care to explain this?" Riaz asked with a forced calm, holding up a pink pair of panties between two fingers. "Looks like a few of the maids decided to sneak in their undergarments for me to wash," Itachi replied nonchalantly. "They probably figured it was fine since I'm just a kid." Without hesitation, he took the garment from Ria's hand and placed it back into the basket. His gaze met hers again, one brow arched at the disapproving glare she was sending him. "Mutilda, Itachi, you seem awfully close with the maids," Riaz said, narrowing her eyes. Then, as though struck by a sudden revelation, she shot upright, pointing dramatically at him. "Don't tell me you have feelings for one of them. That's why you're so eager to help, isn't it? You're trying to impress her." Her tone was filled with exaggerated shock, as if the very idea of Itachi being taken by one of her attendants was unacceptable. Itachi glanced toward Akino, who was clearly struggling to contain her laughter, before turning back to Riaz. "No, I don't," he answered plainly. "Mutilda, don't lie. Boys who live in castles always fall for their maids," Riaz insisted. "Sigh." Itachi exhaled deeply, then asked, "What anime did you get that idea from?" "It's not from an anime. It's from a manga called Ah." Riaz began pulling a manga from the pocket of her skirt, but before she could finish, Itachi snatched it from her hands. Flipping through it quickly, he confirmed the plot centered around a romance between a noble and his maid. Snapping the book shut with a crisp thump, he closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again, his gaze flat. "Riaz-sama. What is it?" "Poke." "Mutilda," Riaz whined, covering her forehead with both hands. This was the second time that day she'd endured his forehead poke. "You shouldn't take stories like this too seriously," Itachi said evenly. "Most of what's in here is just the author's imagination. So, it's not real. That's right. And it wouldn't happen in reality." "Correct." Poke. "Ah, what was that for now, Itachi?" Riaz cried, clutching her forehead again, eyes brimming with tears. "That one had hurt." "Felt like it," Itachi replied simply, lifting the basket and walking off without further comment. "Line break, this is so good." Riaz sighed in bliss as she savored her ice cream. She sat on a bench near the main fountain of a bustling amusement park, Itachi to her left and Akino to her right. Akino was enjoying a popsicle, while Itachi nibbled on some dango. "It's so much fun spending time together like this, right, Itachi?" "Yes," he said with a faint smile after swallowing a piece of dango. "Yes, it is, Riaz-sama." They had been in the human world all morning, enjoying rides and games, and now they were taking a short break. "Akino, how's your ice cream?" Riaz asked. "It's wonderful, Riaz-sama," Akino answered, slowly running her tongue along the popsicle. Occasionally, she cast sidelong glances at Itachi, letting small drops of melted ice cream slide down her shirt in a manner that seemed deliberate. "So tasty," Riaz grinned, swinging her legs happily before standing. "I'm going to get another ice cream. Do you want more dango, Itachi?" She knew better than anyone that her closest friend and secret crush had a weakness for sweets, with dango being his absolute favorite. Oh sure, Riaz-sama, if you don't mind." Itachi nodded. "Are you sure you don't want to? Just relax here and enjoy yourself. I'll be back shortly." The red-haired young woman shook her head lightly, then turned and jogged away, waving an arm over her head as she made her way toward the food stall they had visited not long ago. "Oh, back already, young lady?" The stall owner greeted warmly as she approached. "Yes, I'd like another serving of ice cream and a box of dango, please," Riaz replied with a pleasant smile, reaching into her bag for her wallet. Before she could take out any money, a faint tug at her skirt caught her attention. Turning to her left, Ria's eyes widened slightly at the sight before her, a petite girl, clearly younger by a couple of years. She had short, snow-white hair styled much like Sona's, though with two long front strands reaching her shoulders and a scatter of shorter bangs falling across her forehead. Her hazel eyes looked bright yet weary, and she stood at least a head shorter than Ria's. Her clothing was smudged and worn, but her delicate features gave her an almost angelic cuteness. "And who might you be?" Riaz asked softly, her smile gentle. "Are you hungry?" she added, noticing the girl's gaze fixed longingly on the dango and ice cream. The girl gave a shy nod, which brought a bittersweet smile to Ria's face, warmth mixed with a pang of sympathy. "Here you can ha. What do you think you're doing?" Riaz spun around at the voice, eyes widening once more. Itachi stood behind her, one hand gripping the wrist of an older girl. This newcomer had long black hair and the same hazel eyes as the younger one. What startled Riaz most was the sight of her own wallet clutched in the girl's free hand. "Sorry, but not on my," Itachi began, but the girl abruptly swung her other hand toward his chest. He blocked the blow, yet was unexpectedly hurled backward several feet by an unseen force. "What just happened?" "Itachi," Riaz cried out as his back struck the ground. He recovered instantly, springing back to his feet. "Kuroka-ni-sama. Shiren, we're leaving now." The black-haired woman scooped up her little sister, positioning her securely on her shoulders. Once Shiren's arms wrapped around her neck, she dashed away at incredible speed. Itachi's eyes narrowed in surprise. Such agility and pace were far beyond a normal human's. "Stay here, Riaz-sama. I'll get your wallet back," Itachi said firmly, launching himself after them. "Be careful, Itachi," she called after him. Clearing the park, Kuroka slowed slightly and glanced over her shoulder. "I think she broke off, eyes going wide as she leapt back to avoid a kunai that landed where she'd been standing. "Oh, for crying out loud," she cursed, turning sharply on her heel and sprinting faster when she spotted Itachi vaulting effortlessly over a tall fence. "Stop right there," his voice rang out as he closed the distance with alarming ease. "Return what you took now," he ordered, retrieving the kunai from the ground without missing a step. "Are you insane? No way," she yelled over her shoulder. "Who even are you, some kind of ninja?" "Something like that," he replied, sending the kunai flying toward a car on the opposite side of the street. The weapon ricocheted, redirecting toward her from the right. Kuroka's eyes nearly bulged in shock. She twisted sharply to avoid having her cheek sliced, but the detour brought her face to face with a solid wall. No way forward. "End of the road," Itachi said, pulling the kunai free from the wall as he advanced. "TCH?" Kuroka's gaze hardened as she stepped back cautiously. "Ni-sama, I'm scared," Shiren murmured, her voice trembling as her eyes locked on the weapon in Itachi's grip. "Don't worry, Shiren, Ni-sama's here," Kuroka reassured, glancing at her sister with a steady voice. "I won't let him hurt you." Itachi stopped, studying the two girls for a moment. A faint smile touched his lips, and he slid the kunai back into place. "All right," Kuroka exhaled and turned fully toward him. "How about you forget this happened and just walk away? We're just two sisters with nowhere to go, trying to make it through another day." "As touching as you want that to sound, no. My answer's the same," Itachi replied coolly. "You took something from my master, and I expect you to give it back immediately." "Hey, she's rich enough to buy this whole town, you know. Still not happening." His tone was unyielding as he closed in again. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." "Fine," Kuroka snapped her arm back. "Here's your money." She flung the wallet toward him. Without even glancing, Itachi caught it easily. But the moment his hand closed around it, his eyes widened slightly. Atop Kuroka's head, a pair of sleek cat ears had appeared. It seemed she had counted on his attention being on the wallet, and in that instant chose to reveal her true form. Two sleek, black feline ears sprouted from the sides of her head, twitching slightly as her eyes shifted into narrow, predatory slits. Raising one graceful hand, she began weaving a spell. Within seconds, the surroundings were swallowed by a thick, eerie violet mist that curled and swirled through the air. "What is?" Itachi murmured, only to suddenly fall to one knee, coughing into his hand. His muscles refused to obey him, his entire body was locked in place. "My apologies, but I'll be taking this, Naya," Kuroka purred, stepping lightly toward him and plucking the wallet from his grasp. Before she could savor her victory, Itachi's body broke apart in a flurry of black crows, scattering into the air. "What the Naya?" Kuroka yelped, instinctively darting aside. But the murder of crows didn't strike her. Instead, they shot off in the opposite direction. While Kuroka and Shiren traded bewildered glances, the real Itachi stood silently on the rooftop of a nearby building, watching them with calm curiosity. There you are, Itachi," Ria said, relief in her voice as she spotted him approaching. "Are you unharmed?" she asked, scanning him carefully. "I appreciate your concern, Ria-sama, but I'm fine," he replied with a faint smile. Unfortunately, both thieves slipped away. "Ara, that's unfortunate," Akino said, shaking her head in disappointment. "My apologies." No, it's all right," Riaz assured him with a small wave of her hand. "They probably need the money more than I do. It's kind of you to think that way, Ria-sama." Itachi's smile lingered briefly before he glanced toward the dimming sky. "It's getting late, we should head back." "All right. Can you please stop tailing me, Naya?" The irritation in Kuroka's voice was evident. It was both a question and a plea. For several days now, she had been trying to make the young man named Itachi Uchida lose interest in her. Yet there he was again, trailing only a few steps behind, calmly eating dango from the box in his hand. Their odd pairing drew stares from passers-by, mostly toward Itachi, who made no effort to hide his pursuit of the striking young woman. Some gazes were puzzled, others almost sympathetic, particularly from men who understood all too well why anyone might be drawn to her. Kuroka's beauty was hard to ignore. Her graceful curves, alluring charm, and the unapologetic way she flaunted her assets made it nearly impossible for anyone to remain unaffected. "Don't intend to," Itachi replied matter-of-factly, his eyes flicking to the sleek black wallet he held. "Nice wallet, by the way. With this, it's not hard to guess your favorite color." Kuroka's eyes widened. She recognized it instantly. Her hands shot to her back pockets, finding them empty. With a sharp glare, she snatched it from his grasp. "Give it back," she snapped, only for her attention to catch on the expensive watch strapped to his left wrist. "Hey, that's mine too." Wordlessly, Itachi lifted his arm so she could slide the watch off. "How much can you pull in a day anyway?" he asked casually, tossing her another wallet. "And yes, you're not the only one who knows how to lift things." "That's none of your business, Naya." Her glare deepened as she swiped at his face with clawed fingers, but he tilted his head just enough to avoid the strike. "Stay away from me. Don't you have better things to do, like looking after your girlfriend?" "First, she's not my girlfriend," Itachi corrected, tossing his empty dango box into a nearby trash bin. "She's my master, or at least someone I protect, a friend and a loyal servant, if you will." His voice hardened. "Second, I'm here to retrieve what you stole. I already spent the cash. I'm not after the money, you probably need it more than Ria's-sama," he said evenly. "I want the wallet. It's my little mistress's favorite because of its color." "I sold it," Kuroka replied bluntly, her tone offering no hint of cooperation despite her surprise. "Then I'll just follow you to the buyer," Itachi said with calm certainty. "Take your time, it's not like you can get away from me." Kuroka made an annoyed sound, knowing he was right. Somehow he had tracked her all the way to this town, miles from the park where they'd first crossed paths. Trying to scare him off or hurt him had proven useless. When she'd attempted to read him, she realized he was reading her instead. That had been her first real sign that he wasn't an ordinary man. She had hoped her constant protests might wear him down, but she had underestimated his persistence. "Where's Shiren anyway?" Itachi asked suddenly, buying another box of dango from a food stall without breaking stride. "She's not with you today. Not your concern," Kuroka answered curtly as they entered a quieter part of town. "Why are you still on my tail? It's not like I'm taking you to the guy who bought your princess's wallet. And seriously, what's so special about it? That girl looks like she could buy or be gifted thousands more." "It's obvious you're not telling the truth," Itachi said calmly, his eyes narrowing slightly. The statement made Kuroka's eyes widen in mild surprise. "You're easy to read, so it's not difficult for me to see through your bluff. Also, that wallet isn't anything remarkable." "Then why? But I'll be taking it back regardless," he interrupted with a casual shrug. Kuroka felt the urge to rub her temples at his persistence. "Relax, I'm not going to dig into your personal affairs." His words earned him a strange, cautious glance from her. Fine, whatever, Kuroka finally sighed in resignation. It's at my place. What a pain you are, brat. Good. In that case, please show the way, Kuroka-san. Itachi matched her pace easily as she started walking. She glanced back at him curiously. And what exactly are you supposed to be? My name's Itachi Uchida. I'm a devil, he replied with a faint smile. As for the girl you took that from, her name is Ria's Gremory. She's a high-ranking devil and the heir to the Gremory family. Kuroka froze for a moment, her jaw dropping slightly. You really don't know much about the supernatural side of things, do you? You've got me there, she admitted, nodding slowly while muttering curses in her head. Just my luck, another one. Itachi noticed her reaction, but chose to hold his tongue. Their walk didn't take long, and soon they stood in front of Kuroka's modest, single-story home. It was plain, lacking much decoration, but overall tidy, suitable for a small household. Welcome to my humble home, Kuroka announced as she stepped inside. As soon as she crossed the threshold, a pair of feline ears appeared atop her head, and a swishing tail unfurled from behind. Ah, much better, Naya, she sighed, stretching her arms with satisfaction. One Sama, a cheerful voice rang out. A young, white-haired girl, Cheyenne, hurried toward her older sister, beaming brightly. She stopped abruptly when her gaze fell on the unfamiliar figure standing behind Kuroka. It's okay, Cheyenne-chan, Naya, Kuroka reassured her gently. He's not here to hurt us. If you say so, the younger girl replied, though her wary eyes never left Itachi. I promise I mean you no harm, Cheyenne, Itachi said with a faint, warm smile. There's no need to be afraid of me. Yeah, sure, says the guy who can turn into a flock of crows and vanish, Naya, Kuroka teased as she slipped off her shoes. Wait here, I'll grab that ridiculous wallet for you. Then, leaning toward Cheyenne, she whispered with a playful wink, if he tries anything funny, aim for between the legs, got it? What kind of lessons are you giving her? Itachi asked, expression flat. Cheyenne ignored him entirely, giving her sister a firm nod. Okay, she chirped, then immediately fixed him with the most serious glare she could muster, though it looked more adorable than intimidating. If I were you, I'd be careful around her, Naya, Kuroka teased before disappearing into a back room. Itachi remained in the entryway, occasionally glancing at Cheyenne, who still glared at him with those large hazel eyes. Under normal circumstances, anyone would have melted from the cuteness, but she seemed determined to keep her tough act. Cheyenne, was it? Nice to meet you, he said after a moment. You've got a nice place here. No response, just more glaring. I told you I'm not here to hurt anyone, he repeated. I don't believe you, she said bluntly. That's fair. We're strangers after all, he acknowledged with a small nod. I'm Itachi Uchida. Like I said before, I'm a devil. The moment the words left his mouth, Cheyenne's eyes widened. To his surprise, she lunged forward, attempting to land a kick squarely between his legs. Without removing his hands from his pockets, Itachi casually lifted his foot, catching her ankle with his sole. She was surprisingly strong for her age, though still far from his level. Your sister hides her intentions better than you do, Cheyenne, he remarked, effortlessly intercepting the punch she aimed at his midsection. Mind telling me why you two seem to dislike devils so much? Before she could answer, Kuroka reappeared, holding Ria's wallet. Here, she said, tossing it to him. Itachi caught it effortlessly. Now can you leave? Her eyes drifted to Cheyenne, whose glare had shifted from defiance to something more personal. What's wrong, Cheyenne-chan? Did he do something to you? He's a devil, one Sama, Cheyenne said, pointing at him. He's just like that man. Just like that man, Itachi repeated curiously. So I'm not the first devil you've met. Before Cheyenne could elaborate, Kuroka stepped forward, placing both hands firmly on his shoulders. You came here for the wallet, and now that you have it, you can be on your way, Kuroka stated firmly. She grabbed his shoulders, spun him toward the exit, and began pushing him out of her home. But Itachi had no intention of leaving just yet. Bracing himself against the doorway with both hands, he resisted her attempts. Kuroka planted a foot on his back, leaning into it with all her strength in an effort to shove him out. Itachi, however, was determined to stay. He needed answers about the mysterious devil who had approached her, clearly someone of high rank with intentions of making Kuroka his servant. Wait, who exactly did you meet? I need to know, he pressed. Why should it matter to you? Kuroka snapped, irritation clear in her tone. Out you go, brat. She reached for the doorknob and swung the door open with a sharp push. To her surprise, a hand appeared from outside, gripping the edge and halting the door before it could fully open. Well, well, seems you've been a troublesome little cat again today, Kuroka-chan. The deep voice carried in as the door swung wide, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered young man. He had shoulder-length brown hair, eyes of the same hue, wore an elegant black robe, and displayed a set of bat-like wings behind him. You, Kuroka said carefully, her voice low as she let go of Itachi. The young man's presence clearly unsettled her, and when Itachi glanced back, he noticed Shiren peeking out from behind her sister, fear and anger flickering in the younger Nekashu's eyes. What do you want this time? Kuroka asked coldly. Come now, you know the answer to that, the man replied with a sly smirk, but his gaze shifted, locking on Itachi. And who might you be, young one? My name is Itachi Uchida, Itachi replied evenly, his expression calm. Then, with deliberate weight, he added, Perhaps you know me better as the Queen of Serafal Leviathan-sama. The statement drew a shocked gasp from Kuroka, while Shiren tilted her head in confusion. Well, now the Queen of Leviathan herself, the man said, feigning a warm smile. What an honor to finally meet you. He dipped his head slightly, though Itachi could sense the irritation hidden beneath his polite act. I am Valor Vapula, heir to the Vapula household. They exchanged a handshake before Valor continued. Strange to find you here. I've also heard you serve as caretaker for Ria's Gremory-sama. His eyes darted toward Kuroka. Ara, could it be that this little cat has drawn Leviathan-sama's interest? That's correct, Itachi confirmed without hesitation, causing Kuroka to gasp again. Serafal-sama wishes to make Kuroka and her sister part of her peerage and provide them with a proper home. I'm here to see that they come with me to the underworld. How unfortunate for me, Valor replied with mock regret. I had intended to recruit her as well, but against Serafal Leviathan-sama's will, there's no contest. It is, after all, the word of a Mao. Turning back to Kuroka, his tone shifted to a warning edge. You're fortunate, Kuroka. You and your sister should mind yourselves. A Mao's favor isn't something to squander. There's no need for you to concern yourself, Vapula-san, Itachi replied. I'll personally ensure she behaves. I see, Valor paused briefly before saying, then I have no further reason to linger. I'll take my leave. Do send my regards to Serafal-sama. I will, Itachi assured him. Safe travels, Valor-san. With that, the high-class devil activated a magic circle beneath his feet and vanished in a glow, returning to the underworld. There, Itachi said with a small smile, shutting the door before turning back to the sisters. You're safe now. But then his expression shifted knowingly. Though, you two don't actually believe everything I said, do you, Kuroka? Shiren? The sisters exchanged an uncertain glance. Here's Kuroka's special, Naya, she announced in a sing-song voice, carrying a large steaming pot to the dining table. Itachi and Shiren were already seated, waiting. After explaining the encounter to her still bewildered younger sister, Kuroka had insisted Itachi stay for lunch as thanks for driving Valor away. She knew all too well that the Vapula heir had been keeping tabs on them. Her own strength made her a valuable target, and whatever his plans for Shiren were, she doubted they were good. That was why she had always turned down his proposals. Soup! Itachi leaned forward to peer into the pot while Shiren's eyes lit up in delight. Smells great, what's in it? That's my secret, Naya, Kuroka teased with a wink, ladle in hand. Normally I hate cooking, but I'm making an exception today, Naya. You know, Itachi remarked, I'm the son of the Gremory household's head chef. One taste, and I can tell exactly what ingredients you used. Kuroka's playful smile faltered for a moment. Don't worry, Itachi continued, offering his bowl. Even if we tried, my father and I couldn't recreate this. It has something special in it, a mother's touch. How old are you again? Kuroka asked, carefully pouring soup into Itachi's bowl before passing it back to him. Because, Naya, you sound like some ancient grandpa. I'm old enough to understand the world completely, Itachi replied calmly. In his mind, the moment one became a genin, they were seen as an adult in the shinobi world. Age meant little. What mattered was how much one had lived through, the number of hardships endured, and the horrors one had witnessed firsthand. Thanks, one-sama, Shiren beamed, accepting her portion from her sister with obvious excitement. Itadakimasu, she declared cheerfully before grabbing her spoon. Shiren-chan manners, Naya, we have a guest here, Kuroka reminded, causing her younger sister to pout in slight embarrassment. It's fine, Itachi said with a faint smile. She can eat however she likes. It's clear she enjoys your cooking. That's true, Shiren nodded eagerly, smiling wide. After learning how he had helped them, she had grown to see him as a trusted friend to both herself and her sister. Kurokani-sama's food is the best. All right, you're going to make One-chan blush, Kuroka chuckled, taking her place across from Itachi. Let's eat, Naya. Once lunch ended, Shiren grew drowsy, prompting Kuroka to guide her to her bedroom for a nap. This left Itachi free to wander the house at his own pace. Although he could see the wear and tear of time in certain areas, it was clear Kuroka worked hard to maintain the place, keeping it comfortable for herself and her sister. When he reached the living room, the only other notable space in the home, his gaze landed on a small table holding a few framed photographs. The first showed a younger Kuroka with dark hair, standing beside a woman who bore a striking resemblance to her, except with pure white hair. The second was a more recent picture of Kuroka and Shiren together. My mother passed away when she gave birth to Shiren. The voice came from behind him, and Itachi turned to see Kuroka leaning against the doorway. I'm sorry, he said quietly, realizing there wasn't much else he could offer. Don't worry, Naya, it's all right, Kuroka replied with a faint smile. And your father? Itachi asked, glancing back at the first photograph. I don't see him in any of these. I've never met him. He left before I was even born, Naya. She gave a short shake of her head, and before he could speak, she continued. And before you start guessing, no, Shiren isn't my half-sister. My mother cared for that worthless man enough to have him father both of us. He just abandoned us again before I was old enough to know who he was. Another person with deep wounds left by a missing father. You might want to watch your language around Shiren, Itachi advised evenly. She's still a child. Kuroka only chuckled at the comment. Anyway, he added, it's obvious you love her a lot, don't you? Yeah, she's more than my sister. She's my whole world, Kuroka admitted softly, eyes lowering. For someone like me, a yaoke, it's not easy to find honest work here without drawing attention from supernatural circles. Her voice grew more serious. After some close calls with valor in the past, keeping a low profile became essential. Still, I did everything I could to raise her right. There were times I had to steal or charm wealthy men and strip them of their riches just so we could eat. She looked down with a faint frown. It's not something I'm proud of, but I don't regret a single choice I made to keep her alive. But, Itachi prompted, remember when I tried to pickpocket your princess? Shiren was there. Itachi nodded, recalling the incident. Well, she found out, and instead of being upset, she wanted to help me. I told her to stay away from that life, but she kept following me. With her sensory skills, it wasn't hard for her to track me. So, after enough times of her showing up, you decided to let her join you, Itachi said, already certain of the conclusion. It's the one decision I truly regret, Kuroka admitted with a slow nod. Then she met his gaze. When you told Valor you came to recruit me into Seraphal Leviathan's peerage, for a moment, I wished it was real. A small smile tugged at her lips. I know exactly who she is, one of the 4 Mao of the underworld. She's wealthy, and most importantly, she's nothing like that useless devil. She gave a soft laugh at her own words. I wouldn't mind serving under her if it meant Shiren could have a better life and the chance to experience the childhood she deserves. You really do think only about your sister, Itachi said, smiling faintly. Kuroka simply nodded. All right, he said after a pause. I'll see what I can do. The statement made her eyes widen slightly in surprise. I don't think. Seraphal-sama still has some evil pieces left, he explained, cutting her off. With her strength, even one piece would be more than enough to reincarnate you as a devil and make you part of her peerage. If you can get her attention, and I'm certain you will with my help, likely take you and Shiren in. He gave her a reassuring smile. But in the end, the choice is yours. Wow, I'm not really sure what to say, Naya. Kuroka's lips curved into a slightly nervous smile, though the rapid flick of her feline ears told Itachi that her excitement was genuine. She was clearly pleased with the proposal. Thank you, Itachi. Still, I think you should take some time to really think it over. Itachi slipped a hand into his pocket and pulled out a folded pamphlet bearing the blue crest of the Citri household. Here, keep this. This is a devil's contract, isn't it? Kuroka took it from him, her eyes glancing over the design. That's right. Once you've made your choice, contact me. He gave a slow nod. Even if you decide not to become her servant, you can still enter into a pact with me. I'll even make sure you get a 5 to 10% discount on my services. He added with a faint smirk. Kuroka pouted in response, folding her arms under her chest. I am a devil, after all. All right then, I can accept that. Kuroka agreed, her eyes lingering on the magic circle printed on the leaflet. But as she stared, a lingering question that had been on her mind since tucking Cheyenne into bed finally found its way out. Mind if I ask why you're doing all this for me, Naya? Do I really need a reason? You're in trouble, so I'm helping. Itachi's tone was honest, without hesitation. Besides, you remind me of someone I once knew. Who? She asked curiously. It doesn't matter anymore. He shook his head lightly. What matters now is that you and Cheyenne deserve this chance more than anyone. Kuroka studied him, puzzled. She couldn't quite understand his motives, nor why he seemed so intent on supporting her and her sister. Her mother had warned her long ago not to trust strangers, especially those who appeared out of nowhere, offering exactly what she desired. Valor Vapula had been a perfect example. A man who had once promised her everything, but only in exchange for binding herself to him as his servant. In a way, Itachi fit that same mold, yet, unlike Valor, there was no malice radiating from him. She couldn't sense a single false note in his words either, something that brought her a rare sense of relief. Lies were the last thing she could afford to deal with right now. All right, we'll do it your way. She finally nodded. But there's one more thing I've been wondering. Ask away. Is it possible for a man to become a queen? The question caught Itachi off guard for a moment, though his expression remained composed. You seem to know quite a bit about the evil peace system. Well, when I once asked Valor how he could turn me into a devil, he ended up giving me a 30-minute lecture on the whole thing. Kuroka smirked playfully. So, I'll ask again, can you be a queen, Itachi? He let out a quiet sigh, though a faint smile tugged at his lips. I still don't understand why you've decided to trail me around like this, he remarked flatly, turning to glance at the young woman shadowing him since early morning. The truth was, it was Ria's who had been following him since sunrise. Akino was present simply because it was her duty to remain by her master's side. Of course, the ever-mischievous Akino also found Ria's recent behavior toward Itachi entertaining in its own way. Itachi didn't bother questioning her. He knew her personality far too well. Ria's had grown unusually watchful of him ever since hearing about his second meeting with Kuroka and her little sister, Cheyenne. Her reason. Itachi had no idea. Even after he'd wasted 2 whole hours of his valuable time he could have spent training, explaining why he met them, she refused to back off. Yes, Kuroka was technically a thief, but she wasn't cruel or malicious. Deep down, she was simply a Nekashu who wanted to protect her sister. Besides, he had no plans to see her again until she made her decision and contacted him. Yet that morning, when he made his way to the downtown district in Gremory territory, Ria's had taken it upon herself to tail him, dragging Akino along. Unfortunately for her, it took Itachi mere seconds to realize someone was following him. He had hoped it wasn't Ria's, but luck had never been on his side. What? Ria's pouted slightly, crossing her arms under her chest, which was already far more developed than most girls her age. Is it wrong for me to just want to spend some time with you? Not exactly, but good, then let's go. Ria's radiant smile cut off whatever protest he had been about to voice. Do you even know where we're going? Itachi asked, reaching out to lightly flick her forehead, a gesture she quickly dodged. It's not exactly the kind of place in Ajusama like you should be seen. Ria's blinked in mild shock. Then where are we going? You're not about to drag me somewhere shady, are you? She asked, clearly unsettled. Nothing like that. Itachi shook his head, his dark hair shifting slightly. It's just that this place, well, you'll see for yourself. Stopping in his tracks, he gestured toward the building in front of them. Ria's and Akino followed his gaze and quickly realized they were standing before a medium-sized shop. It didn't take long for them to notice the nature of the establishment. It was a weapons store. A weapon shop? Akino murmured, tilting her head as she read the sign mounted above the entrance. She stepped closer and peered inside. The place wasn't bustling. Only a handful of customers were browsing. but her eyes immediately caught the rows of weapons neatly displayed. Swords, spears, firearms, bows, and arrows of every conceivable style and design filled the shop, each crafted with distinct shapes and finishes. Ah, Riaz exhaled in relief, her hand resting lightly on her chest. The change in her mood didn't escape Itachi's notice, and before he could comment, she looked at him with a cheerful expression. "So, you came here to buy weapons, is that right?" she asked brightly. He could sense her good spirits and decided it was best not to question why. "You could have told me. I could have easily arranged the finest ones for you." Itachi shook his head as they stepped toward the entrance. "It didn't cross my mind. Even if it had, I wouldn't want to inconvenience you, Ria-sama." Being polite, he opened the door for both her and Akino, letting them enter first. "Besides, only this shop's owners can produce the specific weapons I use. You won't find them anywhere else. The ones you use," Riaz mimed throwing something, adding a playful swish sound as her hands flicked forward. "You mean your shuriken and kunai. I've seen you pull off amazing tricks with them, without any magic, too." The memory still impressed her. "That's right, Riaz-sama," Itachi replied with a small smile. His gaze shifted to the shop's counter, where a European-looking devil with sandy blonde hair and a short beard was bidding farewell to a man who had just purchased a broadsword. Hearing a greeting from Itachi, the shopkeeper turned. "Ah, Itachi-kun, welcome back. Here for your order," the man Gerhardt asked warmly. Upon receiving a nod, his eyes moved to Itachi's companions. Recognition lit up his expression when he spotted Riaz. "Well now, Lady Riaz Gremory of the Gremory household." "That's me," Riaz answered gracefully, offering him a polite smile. Gerhardt immediately bowed before turning to Akino. "And this must be Akino, your queen." "Hello," Akino replied with her usual gentle smile. "The pleasure is mine," Gerhardt said before returning his attention to Riaz. "Please, feel free to make yourself comfortable, Riaz-sama. If there's anything you need, just say the word." He glanced back to Itachi. "Give me a moment, Itachi-kun, I'll bring your order out." "Thank you, Gerhardt-san," Itachi replied, waiting patiently as the man vanished into a back room. The faint rhythmic clang of hammers and the hiss of metal cooling reached their ears from the workshop. Riaz was now admiring a wicked-looking demonic scythe resting on the counter, while Akino leaned casually against a nearby weapon rack, watching him. Itachi noticed and raised a brow. "Something on my face? I just feel like looking at you," she replied softly, her small smile unwavering. Her honesty made him slightly uneasy. "Is that wrong? Should I stop?" "It's not wrong, you can do whatever you want, but—" Itachi began, searching for the right words. Fortunately, Gerhardt returned before he had to finish, carrying a large steel box that looked heavy enough to require 2 men to lift. He set it down on the counter and removed the lid, revealing a neatly stacked collection of shuriken. "Here you are, Itachi-kun," Gerhardt announced, holding one up for inspection. "This box contains the 500 shuriken you ordered." "500?" Riaz echoed in surprise. "That's a lot, Itachi." He simply nodded, spinning the weapon effortlessly between his fingers. The balance, sharpness, and craftsmanship impressed him, light yet deadly, exactly as he preferred. "Well?" Gerhardt asked with a knowing grin. "They're flawless," Itachi replied, placing the shuriken back into the box. "I couldn't ask for better." "Excellent," Gerhardt said, clapping once before adding, "I'll bring out the rest." "Rest?" Riaz tilted her head, puzzled. "There's more?" Akino asked as Gerhardt disappeared into the back again, only to return moments later with another identical steel box. Then another, and another. This continued until 6 boxes sat stacked before them. Gerhardt smirked, resting an elbow atop one of the lids. "That's 1,500 shuriken and 1,000 kunai, just as you ordered." "What the—" Riaz cut herself off mid-sentence before completing the curse, her gaze sweeping over the overwhelming display of weapons laid out before her. "Itachi, are you planning to transform yourself into a one-man arsenal? Or is there a war I don't know about?" she asked, her tone a mix of shock and disbelief. "You're letting your imagination run wild again, Riaz-sama," Itachi replied calmly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "There's no need to be alarmed." "Well, I'll admit, Itachi-sama, that's quite the collection," Akino agreed with a small nod, echoing her king's astonishment at the sheer number of weapons he had arranged to purchase. "He's not exaggerating, he ordered 5,000 of each," Gerhardt chimed in, earning wide-eyed stares from both women. Turning back to his customer, the shopkeeper continued, "So, Itachi-kun, that's going to be 500 gold per box." Itachi nodded in acknowledgement, reaching into his pocket for the gold he had prepared in advance. Before he could place it on the counter, Riaz abruptly raised her hand and called out. "I'll cover the cost," she announced with enthusiasm. Itachi arched an eyebrow at the sudden offer, giving the Gremory heiress a brief glance before turning back to the shopkeeper. Without missing a beat, he placed his own payment on the counter. "That won't be necessary, Riaz-sama. Here you are, Gerhardt-san, 3,000 gold as agreed." His voice was even, almost casual. He was well aware that Riaz had the means to pay, but the idea of letting someone else cover his expenses simply didn't sit right with him. "I have everything I need right here." But, whatever argument Riaz was about to make, Itachi swiftly cut off. "Besides, I already paid half the total months ago." Gerhardt confirmed this with a nod as Itachi effortlessly lifted the heavy crates from the counter and set them on the floor. From his coat, he retrieved a sealing scroll inscribed with storage symbols. Though he had mastered the spell for instant retrieval from a dimensional pocket, Itachi still preferred the sealing methods of his shinobi days. Scrolls were quicker for weapon summoning in battle than most magic techniques. "If you insist," Riaz muttered reluctantly, folding her arms in mild frustration. Akino's quiet giggle beside her made her head snap to the side. "What? Do you have something to say?" "Not at all, Riaz-sama," Akino replied, her smile betraying her amusement even as she shook her head. Gerhardt watched with fascination as Itachi sealed box after box into the small scroll, each crate vanishing in a blink, replaced by the kanji for weapon, inked onto the parchment. "That's quite the impressive trick, kid," he remarked, clearly impressed. "I have my own ways," Itachi replied evenly, tucking the completed scroll into his pocket. Straightening to his full height, he inclined his head to the shopkeeper. "That should be everything. Thank you, Gerhardt-san, until next time." "The pleasure's mine, Itachi-kun," Gerhardt said warmly, bowing his head slightly. "Please come by whenever you need more. And Riaz-sama, Akino-san, my doors are always open if you ever require fine weaponry." With a final nod, Itachi turned and stepped out into the street, the two women following him into the daylight. "Itachi," Riaz began once they were outside, "you never actually answered my earlier question. Why in the world do you need that many weapons? It's overkill, even for you." Recently, although not formally bound to Serafal Leviathan, Itachi had been serving as her escort on diplomatic missions at her personal request. These journeys often left the Mao of foreign affairs without the full measure of her usual guard detail, making her vulnerable to attacks. Assassins, typically stray devils or those opposed to her efforts to uphold the fragile peace forged by the four Mao, saw such moments as opportunities to strike. On only 2 trips so far, Itachi had already been forced to fend off multiple hostile forces. He had always returned unscathed, earning Serafal's praise, but her worry never lessened. "There's no downside to being ready, Riaz-sama," Itachi answered with a small shake of his head. "You can never predict when you'll need them." Riaz frowned thoughtfully, folding her arms again. "Expect the unexpected," he added, his tone carrying quiet certainty. "Your enemies will never fight you on your terms." Why phrase it so mysteriously?" Riaz groaned, cutting him off. "Are you trying to sound like some ancient sage? You're starting to act like an old man." Itachi said nothing, his expression unreadable. He had heard far too many comments about his age to take the bait. Changing the subject, he glanced toward a nearby clock. "Well, since I'm free for the rest of the day, I can accompany you and Akino for a while. Is there anywhere you'd like to go, Riaz-sama?" Later that day, "So, what you're requesting is for me to take these 2 girls under my wing, offer them my protection, and accept one of them into my peerage?" Serafal Leviathan asked, her eyes scanning the documents Itachi had painstakingly prepared. The discussion centered on Kuroka and her younger sister, Shiren, and the air between them was serious. "You're asking a lot from me, Itachi-kun, especially when you're not even officially my servant yet." Her voice held a teasing lilt, though her gaze was sharp. Itachi merely nodded, unsurprised by her words. He had anticipated this reaction before arriving. "I understand it's a big favor, Serafal-sama," he replied steadily. "But for them, you truly are the best option for a safer and brighter future." Serafal set the papers aside, her mind weighing the matter. I know where you're coming from, Itachi-kun. Still, taking them in isn't without complications. If I reincarnate them into my peerage, there will be political ripples to consider. The files before her contained not only basic information, but also intelligence Itachi had gathered. Spending hours observing, discreetly listening, and even using his Sharingan to read the intentions of devils linked to Valor Vapula, a high-class devil eager to claim Kuroka as his own. The real issue is that they're among the last surviving Nekashu, an especially powerful branch of the Nekomata race. If I convert them into devils, the leaders of the Yaokai faction won't take kindly to it. I've had my share of difficult negotiations with them before. She leaned back slightly. And then there's how the rest of the world will perceive it. Itachi's tone stayed even. But you're planning to bring me into your peerage anyway, aren't you? I have no notable family name here, no special status in this society. A faint smile curved her lips. Status isn't everything. You're regarded as one of the most gifted young devils of your generation, Itachi-kun. Top marks in every subject, defeating my own sister, someone widely considered a prodigy, and showing exceptional ability in both magic and combat. Many high-class devils have taken notice of you. In fact, if I hadn't already made it known that you were to be mine, they would have tried to recruit you themselves. The only reason they held back was because your close association with Ria's made them assume you'd join her peerage. She sighed softly. Having you as my servant is easily accepted, but bringing Kuroka and Shirn into my service, that will stir up much more resistance, which brings us back to the primary obstacle, handling the Yaokai faction. Itachi wasn't surprised. Everything she said was exactly what he had foreseen, cold facts, nothing more. The Evil Pieces system was designed to restore the devil race's dwindling numbers by allowing pureblood devils to reincarnate individuals from other races into their peerage. It had been heavily opposed by other factions at first, but the desire to avoid another great war had eventually led to its reluctant acceptance, as long as it wasn't used as a means of preparing for war. Still, the system had been used to bring in influential individuals from outside the devil race, some even serving directly under the Mao. Controversy wasn't rare. There had been tense moments in the past, such as when the leader of the Grigori discovered that his daughter, Akino Heimjima, had been reincarnated by Ria's Gremory, the younger sister of Lucifer himself. Yet all the political arguments in the world would be irrelevant if Kuroka herself declined the offer. A thought flickered in Itachi's mind. Should he use the Sharingan to sway her? The temptation was undeniable, but he had already resolved not to manipulate her in that way. His faith in Seraphal's ability to handle the Yaokai leaders was absolute. In her care, Kuroka and Shirn could live far better lives. One simple devil job could earn Kuroka more than she could by stealing for days. They could dress in clean, fine clothes, live in a proper home, and Shirn could attend school, enjoying her sister's cooking whenever she pleased. The younger girl could learn the ways of the Yaokai from her elder sibling, while Kuroka could take pride in finally being the kind of sister she wanted to be. Seraphal studied the determined look on Itachi's face. She knew he was silently mapping out every possible route to secure the sister's safety. With him, nothing less than the most effective plan was acceptable. A quiet question crossed her mind: just how far would he go for their sake? "Oh, looks like you're getting a call," Seraphal remarked when the glowing seal of Itachi's communication magic flared to life on his right forearm. "It's Kuroka," he said, rising from his seat. "I suppose she's reached her decision." The light faded as he turned back to her. "I'll be on my way now. Thank you for your time, Seraphal-sama." He bowed respectfully before leaving. Left alone, Seraphal exhaled slowly, a faint smile playing at her lips. Now what am I going to do?" In an instant, Itachi materialized inside the living room of a modest house, his presence directly in front of the mature woman who owned the place, Kuroka. She had activated the summoning seal he had entrusted to her a few days earlier, calling him here without delay. The dark-haired beauty was dressed casually, though the plain shirt she wore seemed a size too small for her generous bust, and her fitted black jeans ended just above her ankles. Off to her side sat two neatly packed suitcases, one a deep black, the other pure white. "Hello, Nya," Kuroka greeted with her trademark feline tone and a sly, cat-like grin, even giving a playful wave that mimicked the pawing gesture of a cat. "Been a while, how have you been, nya?" "I'm well, thank you, Kuroka-san," Itachi replied with a polite nod and a faint smile. Before he could go on, she flicked her hand dismissively. "Drop the san formality, nya. Makes me feel ancient." "All right then, Kuroka," he chuckled softly before asking, "Where's Shiren-chan?" "She's upstairs in her room, collecting the last of her things, nya," Kuroka answered, motioning toward the ceiling. Noticing his gaze linger briefly on the luggage, she added, "We're moving out, nya." "Moving? Where to?" "That's actually up to you," she said with a small shrug and a half-smile. "If you can persuade your master to help us, we'll relocate to the underworld. If not, then we'll head to Kyoto, the Yaokai capital. I've heard life's much easier for our kind there." Itachi nodded in understanding. Yasaka, the leader of Kyoto's Yaokai, was widely respected for her compassion toward her people. Under her rule, Kuroka and her younger sister could live far more comfortably and securely. "Well, I'm waiting for your answer, Itachi-kun, nya," Kuroka pressed. He hesitated briefly, and in that moment Kuroka sensed where his thoughts were going, but before she could voice it, he shifted the topic. "What about Shiren-chan? What does she want?" "Shiren-chan? Oh, she wants to go with you. Not just because she finds your offer appealing," Kuroka replied, pointing a finger toward him. "Ever since you stopped Valor from coming here and promised to help us, she's been constantly asking about you. Can't really blame her. You're the first person who's shown us genuine kindness." The Nekashu let out a long sigh as hurried footsteps echoed from the floor above. Shiren had either sensed Itachi's arrival or overheard his voice. "Well, too bad she can't." Before Kuroka could finish, a glowing teleportation magic circle burst into existence beside Itachi, flooding the room with such intense light that both had to shield their eyes. As the brilliance faded, standing there with a wide, almost childlike grin, holding a staff topped with a spinning yellow star, was none other than Seraphal Leviathan. "Magical girl Leviathan has arrived," she announced loudly, striking her signature pose. Her sudden, flamboyant entrance left Kuroka momentarily frozen, while Shiren, halfway down the stairs, halted in place, blinded by the flash. "Ara, you must be Kuroka," Seraphal said with delight, darting forward and wrapping herself around the startled woman. Her hands immediately found Kuroka's cat ears, giving them a gentle squeeze. "Kaya, you're even cuter in person," she then spotted Shiren and gasped. "Your sister is adorable too. I could just hug you both to death." "Who the hell is this?" Kuroka demanded, forcibly breaking free by using genjutsu. Physical resistance wasn't enough to pry the overly affectionate magical girl off her. "Always so mean," Seraphal whimpered, landing on her backside. Letting out a resigned breath, Itachi spoke up. "Kuroka, Shiren-chan, this is my master, and one of the Mao of the devil faction, Seraphal Leviathan." "Eh?" Kuroka's eyes went wide, while Shiren only tilted her head in quiet curiosity. You're the Seraphal Leviathan." Clearly, this was not the kind of person Kuroka had imagined holding such a powerful and influential title. "Indeed, Tilda," Seraphal affirmed, striking another pose with a peace sign held to her eye and her tongue playfully sticking out. "My apologies for her behavior," Itachi said, glancing at Kuroka, who was still processing the situation. Tilda, don't be so cold to me, Itachi-kun," Seraphal pouted, lunging forward in an attempt to hug him. Itachi simply sidestepped, causing her to miss and fall forward, this time landing face first. "Oi, please, Seraphal-sama, let's be serious," Itachi urged, offering her a hand to help her up. She accepted, rising to her feet just as Shiren hurried to stand beside her sister. "What brings you here, Seraphal-sama? I thought you said—" I said it would be difficult," Seraphal teased, winking as she lifted her hand and playfully waved her index finger in front of his face. "I never actually said I wouldn't lend them a hand, did I?" Itachi and Kuroka both blinked, their eyes widening slightly. "So, that means— but first, food, I'm starving." Seraphal suddenly burst out with bright enthusiasm, stepping forward and lightly nudging Kuroka aside so she could stride into the house. "Come on, you three," she paused mid-step, then turned back toward them, offering a warm and unexpectedly gentle smile that caught Kuroka off guard. "Let's have dinner together for the very first time." "Wah, this is so tasty." Seraphal all but purred as she emptied another bowl of soup, sighing in bliss before dabbing her lips with a napkin. "Could I get another serving, please?" She leaned forward with the empty bowl in hand, passing it toward Kuroka, who seemed in unusually high spirits. Even Shiren appeared quietly delighted by the cheerful atmosphere Serafal had brought into their home. Perhaps because this was likely the first time she'd ever shared a meal with anyone other than her sister. Of course, Serafal-sama. Kuroka replied with a small smile, taking the bowl from the energetic Mao and refilling it with the last of the soup she had prepared. She didn't have enough ingredients left to cook a proper feast for 4 people, but she made do. Shiren-chan, you eat up and grow into a beautiful, strong woman, just like your sister and me, okay? Serafal beamed at the white-haired girl, who grinned and chirped an enthusiastic okay. In response, the pure joy on her face earned a subtle, protective glare from Kuroka. Good girl, Serafal giggled, reaching over to gently ruffle Shiren's hair. Here's your soup, Serafal-sama, Kuroka said, handing the refilled bowl back to her. After that, the meal continued at a pleasant pace. Serafal-sama, Itachi finally broke his silence after having quietly eaten until now. May I ask what made you decide to change your stance? Change my stance. Serafal tilted her head, smiling faintly. From the start, I only told you it wouldn't be easy. I never said I wouldn't do it. Then, with exaggerated mock sorrow, she turned her head away, pretending to wipe at imaginary tears. Honestly, I can't believe you think so little of me, Itachi. Don't be upset, Serafal-sama. Itachi chuckled softly. So you truly intend to go through all the trouble just to bring Kuroka and Shiren into your service? It will be worth the effort, I'm certain. Her smile brightened as she glanced toward Kuroka, who was quietly listening. I've got good ties with the Yaokai leadership. I'm confident I can arrange something with them peacefully. And besides, these two are adorable. I've always wanted to welcome girls like them into my peerage. Her eyes sparkled suddenly as she turned back to Itachi. Hey, do you think they'd make good guests for my TV show? I will leave that to your judgment, Serafal-sama. Itachi said with a small laugh, before turning toward Kuroka and Shiren to explain. Serafal-sama hosts a very popular show in the underworld called Miracle Leviathan. It's especially beloved among the younger devils. He left out the fact that plenty of older devils also adored her. Ah, so that's why you introduced yourself as Leviathan. Kuroka nodded in understanding, while Shiren gazed at Serafal with starry-eyed admiration. However, I don't think I can make Shiren-chan my servant, at least, not yet. Serafal's usual playful air softened into seriousness as she looked at the younger Nekashu. Perhaps when she's older. For now, only Kuroka-chan will be reincarnated as a devil. Shiren is far too young, and as a Mao, there will be times when I'll need every member of my peerage present. Those moments aren't the right environment for a child. I'd rather she have a normal childhood. She noticed the worry on both sisters' faces and smiled reassuringly. But relax, I'm not separating you. You'll both come live with me from now on. I don't know what to say. Then don't. Itachi has already spoken enough on your behalf. He clearly wants to help you both. So much so, I almost suspected he'd go to reckless lengths to make me agree to help 2 strangers he just met. Serafal shook her head slightly, and Kuroka turned toward Itachi with a look of surprise. Honestly, I'm behind compared to the other Mao. They all have full peerages, and I only have Behemoth and Itachi, and he's not even officially my queen yet. What does that mean? Kuroka asked curiously. I'll explain later, Serafal said, producing several evil pieces onto the table with a flicker of magic. Itachi mentioned your skill in Genjutsu and Yaojutsu, so I believe the bishop piece will suit you best. She held up the blue bishop piece and looked directly at Kuroka. Before we start, I'll ask you again, are you absolutely sure? There's no turning back once you're changed. Kuroka glanced at her little sister, who smiled softly at her. She then looked to Itachi, who gave her a small nod and faint smile. That was all she needed. I'm certain, Serafal-sama, she replied, taking the evil piece. Then it's done, Serafal declared as a massive magic circle flared into being behind Kuroka. Welcome to my family, Kuroka-chan. What are you doing up here, Kuroka? Itachi asked as he slid open the window and stepped out onto the roof, where she lay sprawled with her head resting on folded arms, gazing at the night sky like a lounging cat. Downstairs, Shiren and Serafal were fully engrossed in yet another episode of Miracle Leviathan. Leaving them to it, Itachi had come looking for her. Oh, hey, nya. Kuroka sat up slowly, smiling as he joined her. Nothing much. I just like sitting up here, ah. I see. Itachi gave a simple nod. They sat in quiet for a while before Kuroka spoke again, her voice warm. Thank you, Itachi, for everything you've done for me in Shiren-chan Nya. I'll never be able to repay you. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear before continuing. Whatever your reasons, whoever I remind you of, it's still because of you that we can finally start over. I'm glad I ran into you that day. You mean when you pickpocketed me? Itachi replied evenly, but with a faintly amused smile. Oh, it wasn't that bad. Ria's Ajusama has plenty of money anyway, doesn't she? Kuroka chuckled, waving a hand as he gave her a long, silent look. All right, I'll work hard to pay it back. Though how much was it again? 10,000? 20? She tilted her head in thought. It was 30,000, but you don't need to, before he could finish. Kuroka suddenly leaned over and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek, holding it for a couple of seconds before pulling away. Even for someone as composed as Itachi, the action caught him off guard. I think you deserve more than that, Nya. She teased with a playful smile, brushing her knuckle against her cheek like a cat's paw while her tails swayed lazily. But this will do for now. Please take care of me from here on out, Itachinaya. She gave him a slow, meaningful wink. Itachi tilted his head in mild curiosity but returned her smile all the same.